Hi everyone. In this lecture, we want to look at what is VBA, the future of VBA, and VBA versus macros. Even if you have never worked on Visual Basic earlier, I'm very sure that you would have heard of two terms that advanced users like to throw. One would be Visual Basic for applications, and the other would be macros. Let us look at both of these terms. But before that, a little background on Visual Basic for applications. Now, originally we had a language called BASIC. And BASIC was a high-level programming language and a general purpose language. I'm not going to take you through a history lesson. If you're curious, try and spend 10-15 minutes on it and try to read the Wikipedia article on it. But in 1991 is when Microsoft released Visual Basic, which was an updated version of BASIC. And the big difference is that it had a visual forms builder, something like this, which allows you to create visual forms. Now, Visual Basic has been around for a very long time, and people are still using it and will still continue to use it in the years to come. But in 2008, Microsoft declared it as a legacy language. What that means is that while it is still a part of Excel, they're not really updating it, which means that they're not actively supporting and introducing new features in it. And there are many reasons for that. One is that Visual Basic is a very old language. It has been around for more than 30 years now. And it was created at a time when the internet wasn't even a big thing. And VBA never worked on the internet. That's a big limitation. Also, in terms of VBA's compatibility with other applications and doing API calls, while there are reference libraries available, VBA was not really very good at it. And now that we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the three that powers the internet, we have seen that Microsoft is also shifting towards different languages. And I will explain that to you. But the question is that, is VBA a standalone programming language, or is it something that runs within a host application? Now, VBA is a type of Visual Basic, which means that it is not a standalone application. It is not a standalone language. It runs within Microsoft Office. So it runs within Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on and so forth. The short answer is that VBA is still alive and kicking, and VBA will continue to be there for the years to come. But interestingly, if you do a Google search, you will find a variety of different thoughts and opinion pieces on it. Now, some people say that VBA should not be focused on, and VBA is considered one of the dying languages. But that doesn't mean that it is not important. In fact, one of the big reasons you cannot really replace VBA is because people have been working on it for so many years. And over 3 decades, there is so much work that has already happened on VBA. It is going to take an awful amount of time to port that work over to, let us say, JavaScript or to Python. So rest assured, VBA will be there for the years to come. And in any case, once you learn the fundamentals of VBA, it will make it easier for you to switch over to something like TypeScript, JavaScript, or Python for that matter. Excel Online does not have VBA in any form because VBA was never created for the internet. And there is an alternative called Typescript. You can think of Typescript as the online version of VBA. It is a programming language which is a superset of JavaScript. So you can see that TypeScript is developed and maintained by Microsoft. And syntactically, it is a superset of JavaScript, which means that it's based on JavaScript with a few added features in it. And there is a very nice link that is there, which tells you the differences between Visual Basic and Office scripts. Now, let us look at all of these things as a quadrant. Visual Basic has been around for a very long time, and this is the easy one, which means that it is usable to the end user, and also it works on desktop. It doesn't work on the web. And before Office scripts were there, let us say 7-8 years back, enterprises who needed to deploy scripts, which are VBA scripts, over an entire organization, geographical locations, and more advanced features, they would create something called COM add-ins. That would be COM add-ins, which are component object models. Now we have shifted completely to the right, which means that now we have Office scripts, which is the scripting language that we use on Excel on the internet. And we can also create Office web add-ins. So if you want to create applications that you want to deploy internally within the organization or make it public and release it to other people, you create Office web add-ins, which can be done on JavaScript or on TypeScript. Again, it's an important read, and I would suggest that all of you do go through this. There is another article which says that, and this is not a new article, this came in 2019, but I think it is still relevant today because it speaks about a very interesting context that Microsoft Excel MVPs, which are most valuable professionals, they resisted TypeScript for a very long time, TypeScript and JavaScript. And the reason is very simple, because they have spent so much of their career working on Visual Basic. Now they were expected to shift over to a different tool. But the fact of the matter is that JavaScript is in so many ways better than VBA. JavaScript, like I said, is what powers all the websites that you see. So it maintains a lot of compatibility in the operations that you do on Google Sheets, what you do on the internet, doing API calls, and many other things. And I will give you some examples to get this point across. So definitely go through this link. And the gist is that VBA is not going to go away anywhere, because organizations, the larger the organization, the longer they will take to shift to a different language. But yes, TypeScript and JavaScript is very much here, me included. We are not creating tools and solutions for clients on VBA so much as we used to before, and we are in that transition phase. But like I said, don't consider them to be opposite of each other or unrelated to each other. In real life, in real projects, there would be a proportion. Some of your work you would transition towards TypeScript, and some of it will continue to happen on Visual Basic. This is an easy one. What is Visual Basic for applications versus macros? Now, macros is a general computing term. It is not related to VBA or to Excel specifically. You can have a macro running on a different programming language as well. As a matter of fact, you can see that I have a tool called a macro recorder, which records actions on my computer. And if any of you have worked or heard of robotic process automation, they use macros as well. So if I can quickly show you, you can see that even in robotic process automation, we refer to something called macros. But in the context of Excel, we usually use them interchangeably. So if somebody tells you that there is a VBA code or somebody tells you that there is a macro, we essentially mean the same thing. Macro being the general computing term and VBA being the language that we are working on. This is very important to keep in mind before we start with the live examples. Very, very, very important. There is no control Z in VBA. What that means is that after you run a VBA code, you cannot undo that action. Also, any previous actions that you have done also are lost. So you can't press Ctrl Z to undo any of the previous actions that you have done. Yes, a lot of people ask me, is there any way around it? Sort of. There is a very advanced way of doing it using something called class modules. But this should not be done, and it cannot be done by a general user. You will really need somebody who's a core VBA expert or somebody from the IT team who will help you with it. I have given you the link here. You can go through it, but go and do this with a lot of caution, because this is not meant to be done by general folk, right? This is some of the most advanced things in VBA that you will be working on. So there you go. We have seen that VBA is something which is not an independent programming language. It works inside a host application, which is Excel in this case, but we can use PowerPoint, Outlook, Word as well. VBA macros are the same thing. VBA has been around for more than 30 years. And while Microsoft is shifting towards JavaScript, TypeScript, and in the future, Python will also be integrated with Excel more strongly, VBA is not going to go away anywhere. And if you're starting your journey with programming, VBA is one of the best tools to work on. And especially if your work requires a lot of Excel, a lot of finance, then VBA would be an absolute must for all of you. In the next lecture, we will look at the interface and we will create our first VBA code and see the different ways in which we can run it. Hello, everyone. In the last lecture, we saw what Visual Basic for applications is and the difference, or rather the similarity, between VBA and macros. In this lecture, we will look at enabling the developer tab. We will look at the interface for the VBA integrated development environment. We will write our first piece of VBA code, and we will see the different ways of running the code or running the macro. So we are going to look at saving the file as an XLSM, which is the only way you can save an Excel file with a VBA code in it. How to enable the developer tab, how to open the Visual Basic environment, how to see that all the Excel files are there in the Explorer, but select the correct one before you write the code, enabling the Project Explorer and the Properties window, creating a module, changing the name, writing the first code that we are working on. I will also take you through the syntax of the code. Then we will see how to run the code from the VBA window, from the macros window, and from a shape that we have inserted. And finally, from a quick access toolbar, if you want to create shortcuts for the VBA code. I will also show you what libraries are and how you can access them. And an extra tip, which will allow you to work on VBA and Excel at the same time. Let's get started. So first, we want to create an Excel file. And the very first thing that we will do is to save it not as an Excel SX, but as an Excel SM, which is a macro-enabled workbook. So we go to File and Save As. And let me save it on my desktop. Now you can see that we are going to save this. I'm just going to call this first macro. And we will not select the Excel workbook. We will select the second option, which is a macro-enabled workbook. There is a third option as well, which is a binary workbook. This one can accept VBA codes as well, but then we don't really use it that much. If you're curious about what it is and why you would want to use it, you can do a Google search. but not going to be covered in my lecture. But 99% of the time, you will end up using a macro-enabled workbook, which is an Excel SN. And let me save it. Any file can be resaved as a macro-enabled workbook. And there is nothing in a macro-enabled workbook that works on a normal Excel but doesn't work on a macro-enabled workbook. So think of a macro-enabled workbook as everything a normal Excel X file can do, in addition to also being able to run macros on it. The next thing we want to do is to enable the developer tab. Microsoft has always realized that the normal Excel user will never be a developer, which means they will not be a coder and will not have the ability of writing VBA code. And that is the reason they have called the tab as the developer tab. And they have also hidden it. So the normal user will never be able to see it on their computer, even though this developer tab is available on all the versions of Excel for desktop. Not available online, obviously, but on all the versions of desktop, you do have the developer tab. But we will have to enable it. To do that, we go to File, and then we go to Options. After that, we go to Customize ribbon. And here you can see that we have the developer tab here. And most likely, you would see on your system that it has not been checked. So all you have to do is to check it, press OK, and the developer tab will appear on your Excel file. You do not have to do this for every single Excel file. It is a system setting. So if you make the change once, it happens for all the Excel files, old and new. Do I advise you to hide it after you have written the macro? Not really. Now that you have enabled it, please keep it open. But do keep in mind that this is a developer tab. So make sure that you don't randomly do something which will break your workbook. Follow the steps very carefully. We have enabled the developer tab. Now let us also see how to go to the Visual Basic window. The shortcut for this is Alt F11. And I would suggest that all of you remember this shortcut. So in developer, the first option that I have is Alt F11. That will open up Visual Basic. And the second option is for macros, which is Alt F8. We will come to macros later. But first we want to select Alt F11, or you can also click on Visual Basic. And this window will open up. Most likely, your window is going to look exactly like mine. But in case some of these things are not there, for example, let us say you don't have the properties window, the project explorer, and the immediate window. Do not be afraid. They might be disabled and you will have to enable it. Let me do it and show you what you should do in case they are not available. So let us say these windows are not there. I'm going to close all of them. You simply have to go to View, and you can see that we have the Project Explorer and the Properties window. The shortcut is Control R for the Project Explorer and F4 for the Properties window. So Control R and F4. Like this. You also have an option for the immediate window, which is Control G, but at the moment we are not going to use it, so let me delete it. On the left side, you can see that we have the Project Explorer, and here we have a lot of different things. Let me take you through all of them. The first one that you see is an XLAM file. So this is a special add-in that I have installed on my computer. You will not see this on your computer. What is an XLAM and how do you save macros in an XLAM will be covered much later in the course. Then we have the XLSM file, the file that we are currently working on, which is first_macro. And you can see that this has two objects. We have a workbook and we have a sheet. Then we have another XLAM, which is another application. And then we have an outline. And then we have another XLAM. Now these XLAMs, of course, you can ignore. But why are there two Excel files that you can see? When you open the VBA window, the VBA window is common for all the Excel files. What that means is that if you have 7 Excel files open on your computer at a given point of time, the VBA window will show you all the 7 Excel files in the Project Explorer. Now you might say it's confusing, but this is actually a good thing, because a lot of code that you're writing will be required to connect multiple Excel files. So it's a good idea that you're able to see all the Excels in one single Project Explorer. My suggestion is to minimize everything except the file that you're currently working on. And also, if you have any files open that you're not working on at the moment, please close them. Otherwise, this window will become very cluttered, and that would not help. Now you can see that we have two objects with us. One is the sheet and one is the workbook. We will come to them much later. First, we want to create a third object, which is a module. So coming back to my PowerPoint, you can see this is where all the Excel files are shown. We have enabled the Explorer and the Properties window, and we want to insert a module. Now remember, the module is common for the entire workbook. It is not sheet specific. So let us select the file name, right click, and then insert. You can see there are 3 options that we have. One is the class module, which is a very advanced topic. I will introduce this to you much later in the course. We have a user form. This would also be covered much later in the course. And for now, we want to select a module. And you can see that a module has been created called module 1. In the properties window, you can also change the name if you want, but you have to keep in mind that you cannot have a space. So you have to use either an underscore like this, or just use a what we call a camel case, which means that the first letter of each word is capitalized, a camel case or a snake case. All right, so we have our module here, show my name, and this white window is where we write the code. Now this is the code that we are going to write. Now every code is a routine or a subroutine. So we start by writing a SUB, that stands for a subroutine. And if you're curious what a subroutine is, we can just go to Google and you can see that in programming, a subroutine is nothing but a sequence of instructions that performs a specific task, but they are packaged as a unit, which means that you don't have to write independent lines and run them independently. You can just package all of them as a single unit and then run a sequence of steps. So the SUB here stands for a subroutine. We also have an option called a function, which we'll be covering later. But most of the codes that you write will be a subroutine. Now we have to give a name to the subroutine. So I will simply say, show my name. Now the moment you press enter, 2 things will happen. There will be an opening and closing parentheses that comes here, and you also have an end subroutine. You can put these manually as well, but you do not need to because they will come automatically. And in the middle is where we write the code. So we have written the name of the subroutine, but here we write the code. And we want to show the username. So I will first create a message box. Now this is similar to Excel in the sense that message box is like a function. And when I open a parentheses, you can see that we have all the arguments or the parameters coming here. So in message box, we want to write application. And you notice that the moment I add a period, this is called the dot notation. It shows me options that are available inside the dot notation. So for example, if I want to say application dot username, I can simply say application dot username like this. You will also notice that the M and the B and the A and the U and the N are all becoming capitalized. That happens automatically. You don't really have to bother about it. Now, the concept of this dot and the fact that it shows you all these properties and methods happens because it uses something called IntelliSense. So in programming, we have something called IntelliSense, and IntelliSense refers to intelligent code completion. Most programming environments support this. So what it means is that after we have written, for example, here I'm doing something in Visual Studio. You can see that the moment I write app for app and I put a dot, which is the dot notation, I can see different properties and methods inside it. And the concept of the dot notation is like this. So when I want to access a property, this is what I do. Snack.cookie is where I'm accessing the property for the snack, which is my variable that we have created. And we also have another option called a bracket notation. We can use that in VBA as well. And in fact, we will be using it in VBA, but I'll discuss it when we reach that point. So remember, in programming, we have both the dot and the bracket notation. In case you come from a programming background, you might think in JavaScript, we end every line with a semicolon, but we don't have to do that in Python. Also, if you have worked on Python, you can see that, okay, so the dot notation and bracket notation is clear. The semicolon is required when you're working with something like JavaScript, but when you're working on Visual Basic, you don't need that. So the end of line, you don't need to put anything. Also, if you work on Python, you will know that the white space has a meaning. Here, the indent, which is the white space, doesn't have any meaning. So if I put spaces like this, it improves the readability of the code, but doesn't add any value. Perfect. So we have our code. And in the PowerPoint, I've also explained what these different things are. So the code starts with a subroutine, ends with a subroutine. And the first line ends with an open and close parentheses. After a dot notation, different options appear. Now let us see how to run the code. Of course, there are many different ways of doing this. The first option is to click on the run button. That is the green arrow that you see. The shortcut is F5. In certain environments, the shortcut is F5, but it might be different depending on the application that you're working on. So if I click on it, you notice that there is a message box that appears, and it is automatically picking up the username registered on my laptop, which would be my name, Havish Madhupati. I can also press F5 directly, and it will run the message box. Let us minimize the VBA window, and we will go to Developer and select Macros. Remember, the shortcut is Alt F8. Now in macros, you can see this is the macro that we have created. And if I click on run, we are able to run the macro. And also in the view tab, the last option is for the macro. And you can see that here as well, you can run the macro. There are two other ways of running a macro. One option is to use the quick access toolbar. So I will go to this drop down. Now remember, this option, which is the quick access toolbar, might be either above or below the ribbon. Let me explain that. So this is above the ribbon, or it might be below the ribbon. But just make sure that you find this option, which is this one, the small drop down. And here we will say more commands. In more commands on the quick access toolbar, we are going to select the fourth option, which is macros. And we will select the macro that we have created, which is show my name, and then add it. If you want, you can also modify the icon. So let us keep a different icon here, like this, and press OK. You can see that the macro has appeared on the quick access toolbar. And if you click on it, the macro runs. And the final way is to run it from a shape and use the shape as a trigger. So let me insert a shape like this, right click, and then assign a macro. We will select the macro, click on OK. And now you notice that this has become a trigger. So when you click on it, the macro is executed. You can even do this with an image. So to create a more positive user experience, let us say we have created an icon here, right click, assign macro, and you can see that now this shape will act like a trigger, and when I click on it, the macro is executed. Okay, so we have covered all of this. Let me also show you libraries. F2 being the shortcut. So if you press F2, you can see this is the libraries window, and you can see a list of all the classes and the members that are available. For example, if we go to application, right? You can see this. We have the class and the member that you can see. For example, if I go to application, the first one, it tells me all the members that are available. And if I click on any member, at the bottom, it shows me a little bit of the property as well, like this. If you click on the application, you can also use this as a link, like this. Now see, this is meant for more advanced users. So you're not really supposed to memorize it or go through it. Yes, every once in a while, it is handy to be able to see what are the members available to you, what are the properties available to you. But personally, from a basic user's perspective, I think this is more confusing than helpful because there's so much available in it. It can get quite overwhelming. Use it if you feel it adds value, but don't be compelled to feel that you have to use it. I showed it to you in case you were wondering how to access the libraries. But from my suggestion and from my experience, I would suggest that you learn it not from the libraries window, but learn it by searching on Google. One last tip that I would like to share with all of you. I work on a multi-monitor setup. So it is very easy for me to be able to work on one system where I can see the Excel file, and on another monitor, I can see the VBA window. But what if you would like to see the VBA window and the Excel file at the same time? Now, for this, you have to press Windows left and Windows right. Let me show you. You can see that I have both my VBA window and Excel file open. I will open my Excel file and then press Windows left arrow. And then the Excel file will take up the left half of my screen. And then on the right half, we can select the VBA window. And this is great because you're able to work on both of them at the same time. Also remember, while you're working on the VBA window, you do have a save option here as well. So you can go to File and Save, or you can press Ctrl S. Even if you don't do Ctrl S, whatever you have done here will not get deleted. So even if you close this window, you can always press Alt F11 or come back to Visual Basic, and the code that you have written will still be here. But if you don't save it in the VBA window and you don't save it in the Excel file, then of course the code will get deleted. So let us save the work and let us see what all we have done in this lecture. So we have seen how to save as an XLSM, how to enable the developer tab, how to go to the VBA window. We have understood the interface and we have seen the different ways of running the VBA code. We wrote our first piece of VBA code, and I also showed you how to see the VBA code in Excel at the same time. In the next lecture, I want to show you how to copy codes from the internet, which is a very important skill that all of you need to learn, and we will see how to do that. Hello, everyone. In the last lecture, we saw the VBA interface, and we saw different ways of running a macro. In this lecture, we want to look at copying codes from the internet. Now, I know what you're thinking. This seems like cheating, doesn't it? It seems as if we are taking a shortcut. And then rather than learning how to write the code, we are doing the easy way out, which is to copy codes from the internet. Now, if you come from a background of coding, you understand why this is super, super important, isn't it? And if you do not come from a background of coding, this is for you. You have to understand that the development community, the coding community, survives on copying codes from the internet. And it is not a bad thing. Number one, copying codes from the internet is a skill, and more senior developers spend a lot more of their time going online and reusing code that is already available. And they have that knack and their ability of finding the perfect answer. This is not cheating, this is a skill. It's just the opposite of what you're thinking. And number two, there is so much content available on the internet that it is foolish to try and do everything yourself. It makes more sense to focus on training yourself at being able to locate the right content rather than writing it yourself. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not telling you this because I want to take you through an easy route and I want to give you a shortcut. Not at all. I'm a 40 under 40 analytics in VBA. I've been working on Excel for 20 plus years. And when I say this, take it with the right spirit. Coding cannot happen if you do not go online and you look at the ready-made codes that are available. That is a skill that you will have to develop. How do you search for VBA codes on the internet? You can simply type VBA code 2, and then after that, type the query that you have. Of course, in the beginning, you will be a little lost because you would not even know what to search for and where to go and find it. But then that is something that you will get better at over a period of time. You can also go to a website called Stack Overflow, which is one of the havens for all programmers. And this is where it's a community where you can ask questions in and around Excel and VBA. Now, please keep in mind that almost all the good websites have comments written in the code, which explains to you how the code works and how to modify it. Again, this is something which non-coders don't really understand. And you must be wondering, but why would some of the smartest coders put in so much effort and put it out there completely free of cost? And on top of that, they're also explaining you how to use it and how to modify it. See, that is just the way the development community works. That is the way the coders work. We like to share our knowledge with others because that is how we are able to absorb knowledge from others. Also, there is no one perfect website for VBA codes. There are dozens, even hundreds of them. While there are a lot of specialists and masters in VBA, everybody has their own area of specialty. So somebody might be very good at automation with Outlook. Somebody might be very good at charts. Somebody else might be very good at financial formulas. So don't try to find that one person or that one website or that one YouTube channel. Of course, I'll be sharing a large list of these things with you. But please make sure to go to different places. Don't go to the same place and expect everything to be available there. Finding the right solution and asking the right question is an art. It's a skill that you will develop over a period of time. And like I said, the best coders know how to ask the right question. If you're not able to find the solution the first go, don't give up. Try to rephrase the query. I have seen so many people who just give up and they say we are not able to find the answer. But when I do it, I'm able to locate the right answer. And yes, finding answers is not always a 2-minute task. Sometimes it takes you hours to be able to arrive at the right answer. I might say I have even spent days sometimes trying to find the right answer. So that is completely normal, right? And you should not be doubting yourself when it takes you such a long time to try and find all these things. That is just the way it works. Also, I would suggest that reading other questions and answers is a great way of learning. So even if you don't have a problem statement at the moment, go to a website like Stack Overflow and just see the top rated questions and answers, because you might learn something from it. In fact, in all likelihood, you will learn something from it and you'll be able to use that learning later. Okay, before we come to the kill word, let us look at how to search for a code online. The first thing I want to do is to save my Excel file. So let me save it on my desktop and I'll call this copy from internet, and we will save it as an Excel SM file. These files you can find in the resources folder. Now there are two codes that we want to write. One of them is to create a table of content, and the other one is to create a list of all the formulas. First, let me create 3 sheets. Now imagine that I have asked you to create a list of all these sheets. So let me just call it the intro, the analysis, and the references. Now, typically what you would do is to create a new sheet. You will have to call it the index. Then you will type intro, analysis, and references. And then one by one, right click, link, and we will insert a link to the intro sheet. And I will have to do this 2 more times. So on analysis, right click, link, analysis. And then finally, on the references sheet, once again, link, and then references. Now, this wasn't really difficult, but this is a very time-consuming process, and you have to do it every single time. And imagine that you have 50 sheets with you. Look at the amount of time it would take you to do this. And it is very likely that you will make some error here or there. So I want to show you how to automate this process. We will go online and I will simply say VBA code 2 and I will say create table of content. Now there isn't one, there are many different examples that have been given. And you will learn to identify the best website over a period of time. But for now, let's just go to the spreadsheet guru. And the code is going to be quite long, so don't worry about that. We just have to copy and paste it. So this is my VBA code. I will just copy the entire thing like this, starting at the subroutine, which is sub, and ending at end sub, which is the end of subroutine. We'll copy it, come back to Excel, and then we go to developer and Visual Basic. This is the workbook that I'm working on, which is copy from internet. Right click, insert module, and simply paste it. No need to change anything, just paste the code. Let us close the VBA window. and I will go to developer and macros. This is the VBA code, table of contents underscore create. And if we run it, how cool is that? It is showing me the table of contents, analysis, intro, references, and it has a hyperlink as well. Now let us say that you want to modify something in the code. For example, the sheet name is contents, and here it says table of contents. So I'm okay with the sheet name, but I would like the value in B1 to be index. I don't want to say table of contents. Let us go to the VBA code. And even if you don't understand most of it, you can at least do a Control F, search for table of content. And I'm sure with zero programming background, you will still understand what this is. It tells you that in the range B1, in the cell B1, you're putting a value which is table of content. And of course, we can change it to index. Let us run the code one more time. So if I go back to macros and run it, now you notice it says index. That is how you can modify codes that you copy from the internet. And the best part is that you have also been given the comments here. So it tells you in the green color what all of these lines of code do. And this is great when you want to understand something or you want to make a change to any of these things. Very helpful, right? Let us look at another example. So I'm just creating some random numbers here first. And let us say we have north and south and west and east. And then we have the sum of all of these. Then I have the average of all of these. And then I have the sum of the sum, and then I have the average of the average, like this. And maybe let's do a count as well, so we know how many transactions are there. Now, just by looking at this file, can you tell me how many formulas have been written? Not possible, right? You don't know how many formulas have been written just by looking at this. So what is the trick? The trick is that I will use a VBA code that will populate a list of all the formulas for me. So we will say VBA code to show or to create a list of formulas. Like I said, I have been doing this for a very long time, so I know exactly what to search for. And it is okay if you don't understand it in the first go. Experiment, explore, try to break it, try to do different keywords. And over a period of time, you will get better at it. So I will go to Contextures, which is again a great website. And we will scroll down and you can see here's the code. So let me copy the entire thing. Control C. Now, in terms of the VBA code, you have two options. You can either paste the code below the existing code, and you notice that this separation line appears. So this horizontal black line tells you that this is the first code and this is the second code. But to make it neater and cleaner, you can always insert another module and you can put the code in it. So this is list all formulas. All right, so let me go to developer, macros, and select list all formulas. And how cool is that? It's automatically telling you the serial number, the sheet name, the cell, and the formula that has been written. Imagine the amount of time this can save you. Now let us go through the code and understand it a little bit. Now, one more point that I wanted to tell you was that never ever try to understand the complete code. Two reasons. One is that you cannot understand everything at the same time. Staring at the code is not going to help. So your understanding of the code and more advanced and complex topics will improve over a period of time. So when I started teaching myself VBA in 2014, I also made this mistake of trying to spend too much time on a piece of code and trying to understand it and do a reverse Google search. But that does not help because my capability as a developer was not up to that level to be able to understand everything. So you have to be a little patient. My suggestion from my experience would be that when you find a code, go through it and give yourself a target of understanding 5, 10, 15% of it. I think that's a great start. But if you tell yourself that you want to understand it 100% and you will not move forward unless and until you have understood everything, it doesn't make sense because you can only learn the basic concepts and then the intermediate and then the advanced topics. You can't learn everything at the same time. And in any case, learning and memorizing everything is pointless because there are a lot of things that other people have done very well for you, which are perfectly reusable. And as long as you know how to copy and paste it and the fact that it works, you don't really need to break it and deconstruct it and try to understand it completely. Yes, if you're a perfectionist, you will have the tendency to feel, why do I not understand how this works? But then try to think about it. There are people who have been working on VBA for such a long time, and they have created these really long, complex pieces of code, and it's not worth your time to try and understand each part of it. It's not a reflection on you that you can't, right? But I have also realized over a period of time that if there is a code that works and I know how to use it properly and effectively, and I never need to modify it, then it doesn't make sense for me to learn it if I don't need to learn it and use it somewhere else. If I can just copy and use it, it's not worth learning it. So coming back to the code, let's go through the table of content. I'll just broadly take you through the entire piece of code. First, we have all the declarations, right? So I'm declaring my worksheet as SHT. I'm declaring my worksheet, which is content underscore sheet. That's the sheet in which all the content will come. The list of sheets will come, not the content. Then I'm declaring my array as a variant because I'll be creating a list of all the sheets. Then I have X as long and Y as long. These are numbers. Sheet name 1 as a string and sheet name 2 as a string, which is the name of the sheet. And then I also have the content name as a string. First thing I'm doing is I'm saying content name is contents. This is the name of the sheet that I'm giving. That means the sheet name that you see here, this is what we are giving here, right? Okay, after that, I'm doing some optimization. This will help me reduce the flickering of the screen and help me run the code faster. So whenever you're optimizing the code using application display alerts and screen updating, which have been turned to false, which basically means you have turned them off, at the end, you will also notice that you have to turn them on. This is very common. You will find it in a lot of code that has been written. Then you are deleting the content sheet if it already exists. Think about it. If there is already a sheet called contents, you would want to delete it, isn't it, before putting the new table of contents in it. So that is what we are doing here. We are saying that activate or select the contents worksheet. But why is there an on error resume next? This means that in case the contents sheet doesn't exist, how will I select it? It will give me an error. It will try to tell me that, Havish, I can't select the sheet because it doesn't exist. That is where we are saying that if there is an error, ignore the error and continue with the rest of the code. Then I'm using a simple conditional statement where we're saying that if the active sheet is equal to content name, then my answer is equal to message box, a worksheet named content name has already been created. Would you like to replace it? Think about what this says. It says that in case the sheet already exists, it will ask me, do you want to replace it? Yes or no. Now, if the user selects no or cancel, right? That is what we want to check. So if the answer is not equal to yes, then I will say exit sub. That means I want to exit the code. I don't want to do anything else. Otherwise, I want to delete the sheet. Let us give an example. Let us give this a go. If I go back to my Excel file and I see that there is already a content sheet, if I run the macro, you will see that there is a prompt that comes. What does it say? A worksheet named contents has already been created. Would you like to replace it? Now, how did it know that there is a content sheet? Because the code searched for the content sheet. Now, if I click on cancel or if I click on no, it will just exit the subroutine and it will not do anything else. But if I say that I do want to delete it and create a new table of contents, it will delete it and create a new table of content. All right, after that, we are saying after the sheet has been deleted, create a new content sheet. So we are saying worksheets.add before worksheets 1. That means we're adding a sheet in the beginning of the workbook. So if there are other worksheets, this new sheet should be placed before all the other sheets. Then I'm setting the variable to content sheet. So I'm saying that set the content sheet to the active sheet. So this current sheet that I've created, the blank sheet, will be the content underscore sheet. Then on that content sheet, we are making a few changes. We are changing the name to content name. We're writing the value in B1, which is index. And in B1, we are also setting the bold font to true. This should be simple enough. This is the complex part, right? This part. So what we're doing here is I'm creating an array with a list of all the sheet names. I will complete the topic of arrays later in the course. It's a more advanced topic, but very important in programming. But broadly, what we're doing is I'm creating a list of all the sheets that we have. Redim means it's a redimensional array. So I'm saying that for all the sheets that are in my workbook, it might be 3, 5, or 50. I'm saying that for every single sheet in the active workbook, if the sheet name is not equal to content name, because I don't want to include the content sheet, right? I only want to include all the other sheets. Then what do I want to do? I want to create an array with a +1. So that means the list of all the sheet names will be created. That means that all these names that you see, F underscore sheet 7, intro, analysis, and references, a list of all these 5 sheets are being created. But then I want to alphabetize them so that I can see them in an alphabetical order. How do we do that? For this, I'm using this piece of code. That is where I'm using an upper bound and a lower bound. That is the U bound and the L bound. I'll not take you through this, but this is where the X and Y is being used. So essentially what we're doing here is we're taking the list of values and we are alphabetizing it. After that, I will create my table of content. So now that we have a list of all the sheet names in an alphabetized order, I will say that let us select the content sheet. And with that content sheet, do you see this X plus 2, 3? That means where are we putting this value? Do you see this in the second column? Or sorry, in the third column and in the third row. This is where the value will come, analysis. That is what we are doing here. Dot cells X plus 2 and 3, like this. And this is the hyperlink that we are keeping, right? This part. And then of course the serial number also has to be written, which is what we're doing here. This means that the serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is coming like this. After that, we are selecting the sheet and we are selecting the column and making it auto fit. Why is this important? Because if I don't do it, then the sheet names will appear like this. It will not be auto fit. After that, some additional formatting. So I'm selecting AB and I'm setting the column width to 3.86. So the column width here is 3.86. The B1 font size is 18. And then B1 F1, we are putting a thin border around it. And then of course, we are putting some colors and center alignment and all of that. And finally, we're also setting the zoom level to 130. I hope you were able to capture 5, 10, 15% from it. I understand some parts of it are a little complex, but the flow and the process is the most important part. And this is a great example for you to see how a typical VBA code will be written. Writing code doesn't mean staring on your computer screen and just writing pieces of code one after the other. It is about a business process. You have to understand the workflow. You have to understand the steps. You have to understand the branches. You have to understand the user requirements. You have to understand the data that has been given to you to be able to create a proper, efficient process that minimizes the user intervention and has the most accuracy. and of course saves you time at the end. Let us make a few changes here to get the hang of it. So what I'm doing here is that in the column width, I'm making it 10. In the font size, I'm making it 25. And let us also come to my horizontal alignment, and I'll make it XL left. Here as well, we will say XL left. We will set the zoom level to 200. And what else can we change here? Yeah, I think that's good enough for now. Let us go back and try it one more time. So this time I will again go to macros and select the macro and run it. And it gave me an error. Do not worry. Like I said, errors will happen all the time in VBA, so get used to it. Errors doesn't mean you have done anything wrong. I mean, sure, you have applied an incorrect property, but it doesn't mean that your entire code is wrong. So you have to be able to isolate that part which you have not done properly and then try to fix it. So let us go to debug, and we will see that vertical alignment does not support left here. Okay, so let me cancel that. So let me first stop the error. So we click on the reset button, and let me undo the code to center and only change the zoom level for now. We'll make it 200. So let us run the macro. Okay, do you see what happened? This time the zoom level was 200. If you notice here, that is how you can create a more positive user experience by controlling all these elements. Now, let us say you wanted the width of column A to be a little lesser. It's a lot right now. So let us go to the VBA code, and where it says my column width is equal to 10, which is for column A and B, I will only select column A and make it 2. We'll copy this, and in column B, we'll make it 10. So if you see what happens when I run the code, one more time. This time you notice that column A is only 2 and column B is 10. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, you will select the wrong property every time, but it doesn't matter. That is how you will learn. If you are too careful and if you do not want to experiment, you will never be a coder. If you want to be a coder, you have to experiment. You have to try to break things. And even when something is working properly, you should try to change it and see what happens when you change it. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it will not work. But then you will have some learning as a takeaway. And that learning will help you going forward, right? So that would be my very strong advice to all of you. Please, please experiment and explore. Don't just copy the code and if it is working, move on to the next example. Make sure that when it is working, try different variations, and that is a great way for you to learn. One last thing I wanted to tell you was that there is a kill in VBA. Let me just explain what that is. So you will notice here that we do have a kill statement in VBA. And this is a little dangerous because it can delete the file from a disk. For example, if you have written kill and you simply write the path after that, it can delete an entire file or a folder or a directory. Please be very careful. When you're copying codes from the internet, don't go to any fishy website. And if you don't have confidence in the code, don't use it. You don't need to be too afraid because the worst that will happen is that it will probably not work the way you intended. But the kill is something that you have to be very careful about because the kill can delete files without a prompt and it's a permanent delete. So you can't even press Ctrl+Z or restore it from recycle bin. But here is where it gets even more complex. There are certain codes where kill is required because in the code, you are genuinely creating some sample files, some temporary files. Now, it's hard to tell you when to trust it, when not to trust it. But my suggestion would be, if in doubt, don't use it. At least for the next year or two, while you're still getting the hang of VBA and training yourself to be better at it, avoid anything that you feel has a risk element on it, or perhaps go and ask somebody for their advice. but be a little careful. Honestly, I have not really seen a lot of examples where people have made irreversible changes because of using kill. But then it's my duty to tell you that there is a kill command, a kill statement. And VBA does have the ability of deleting files on your computer. So just keep this in the back of your mind. All right, so in this lecture, we have seen how to copy codes from the internet. I've shown you why it is important to do it and what should you keep in mind while doing it. We have also seen that kill statement is there. And I've written, be careful that the code does not contain the kill unless you know exactly what it is supposed to do. We have done 2 examples for table of content and list all formulas. And of course, I've already explained the code to you a little bit, so you understand the broad process. The website that I mentioned was Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, if you search for VBA, you notice that there are 196,000 questions on VBA. And if I search for Excel, you notice that there are 258,000 questions on Excel, which is quite odd because this is really meant for coders, for programming languages. And VBA is mostly used by data analysts, not so much in the proper programming domain. But it's wonderful that even in VBA and Excel, there are so many questions and answers available. And like I said before, even if you don't really have a problem per se, you should still come here and search for what other people are asking and talking about. And that would be a great way for you to learn. While what you are practicing in real world will of course help you. But at the same time, if you're also able to go to the website and spend some time on it, that will be time very well spent. In the next example, we are going to look at recording a macro. So I'll tell you how to perform actions on an Excel file and how to record a macro at the same time, which will auto-generate the code for you. Hi, everyone. In the last lecture, we saw how we can copy codes from the internet. And now we want to look at how we can record macros. We can do the same thing in Excel Online using Typescript. We can do it on Google Sheets as well. And of course, we can do it in Excel. We will also see how to do the same thing in 3 different tools. But before that, let us do this in VBA. Now, the concept of a record macro is that it will automatically generate the code for you. That means that as we are performing actions, the code is written at the backend automatically. Let us start with a simple example. So I'm opening a new Excel file and we will save it on the desktop. And we will say record macro and basic. Remember to save it as a Excel SM file. All right, now let us say we have some data with us. We have the name, the sales value, like this. And I want to perform some action on top of it. So first I'll create a duplicate sheet and I'll change the numbers a little bit. First we go to developer and there is an option called record macro. What it says is that every command that we perform will be saved into the macro so that we can play them back again. You will also see that there is an icon here in the application status bar saying that no macros are currently recording, and I can click here to start a new recording. So we can either go to record macro at the top or this button at the bottom. So let us go to record macro. It asks you for a name. So I'll just call it first example. Remember, spaces are not allowed, so you will have to put an underscore. My suggestion would be not to use the shortcut key, because if you keep a shortcut key like Control C, then the inbuilt shortcut that you have for copy will stop to work. And also, I don't personally see the use of creating a shortcut, because it's not that you have to do it 100 times. Whenever you need to run the macro, you can always do it using the QAT or by creating a sheet. My personal suggestion would be not to use the shortcut key. And then, of course, you have a description here. So you can write something. I can say this macro records formula plus formatting. I click on OK. And you can see that here the start changes to stop recording. And here at the bottom as well, the button has changed, and it tells us that there is a macro currently being recorded like this. But the problem is that I can't see the code, right? Like, I know when I click on any cell and I perform an action, something is being recorded, but how do you know that? My suggestion here would be to go to developer and open Visual Basic. And you will see that a module has been generated called module 1. And these are certain actions that I have performed. What is the best way to be able to see the code and the Excel at the same time? Something I told you earlier as well. Let me close the Project Explorer and the Properties window. And we will press Windows left and Windows right. That will allow us to see the VBA window and the Excel file at the same time. So if you notice, let me first delete everything. See this. When I click on D4, do you see the code says range D4.select? When I select D4 to D8, it says D4 D8.select. How cool is that? So every action that you perform is being recorded. What if I increase the zoom level? Do you see how the code is being recorded here for the zoom level? What if I make something bold? It says C3 C5 selection.font.bold equal to true. And what if I put a formula? If I say sum of C3 C4 C5, it tells me that there is a formula that I've inserted like this. So this is a great way for you also to learn and see how different things work. For example, if let me first delete all of this. Okay, so if let us say, select the data and I insert a chart. So insert a chart, just our basic pie chart. You can see the code here. It says that active sheet.shapes add chart. 251 is the chart that we have created. And then the source is B2 C5. But what if you want to change something on the chart? I want to change the colors and I want to make it into this monochromatic blue color. It says active chart.chart color is equal to 21. And what if I change this into a different type of chart? Let us say style number 8. You can again see it has been recorded here. Once again, when I reduce the zoom level and I reduce the size of the chart, do you see this has also been changed? So this is the scale width and the scale height. And if I move the chart somewhere else, it tells me increment left and increment top. So if I keep it right on A1, now it moves minus and minus. So it is actually moving to the left and to the right like this. If you change the chart to a different type, so if I change it to, let us say, a donut chart, then it says active chart.chart type is equal to Excel donut. So this is great, isn't it? It's a great way for you to learn how VBA works at the backend. Of course, everything cannot be recorded. For example, the example that we did for table of content, that has to be done manually. You can't record all of it. Parts of it, yes, but not all of it. Let us stop the recording and let us do it one more time. So let me come to my example. We will again go to developer and we select record macro and we'll call it first macro, and OK. We will select C6. We will put equal to sum of C3 colon C5. We'll also make it bold. And I will also change the color to a different color. Let us say a green color, like this. And you can see that when we go back to developer and stop the recording, this is what has been recorded. So now we selected C6. We put this formula here. The R-3C, R-1C means that from the current cell, I selected 3 rows up. So that is -3. And the -1 here means we selected 1 row up. That is why it is -3 and -1. The C does not have a number because we were on the same column. But if we were on a different column, then the C also would have had a number on it. Then we made it bold. And then this is the part where we changed the color to green, like this. And now when we come back and we try to run it on a different sheet, I can just go to macros, select the macro and run it. And you notice immediately it works. All the actions have been repeated on this sheet as well. Since this is the first time you're recording a macro, I would suggest that you pause, spend a lot of time trying this out and getting comfortable with it. Let us close this, everyone. And let us move on to our next example. Now, this is a little more detailed, but this is also more practical. I've taken this from a training that I conducted for a very large energy and power company. So what we have here are different targets that have been given here. And we have the description in column B. That is not really important. It is there just to give you some context to the data. Now, the objective that we have is that we have the value for April, May, and June, and we want to get the total in column L, like this. So the objective is we want to find the sum of the 3 months. We want to copy the formula down, and we want to make it bold. Let's see how to do this. We will go to developer, and I will go to record macro, and we will call this as absolute macro. Click on OK. Macro recording has nothing to do with time. So a lot of people feel that they have to hurry. So once you click on the record button, you will have to immediately start recording it. But that is not the way macros work. Macros only record actions that you perform using the keyboard or a shortcut that you're pressing or a formula that you're writing, or if you're selecting something with the mouse in the ribbon. But it has nothing to do with time. So the first thing I will do is to click on L4, and we will say equal to F4 plus H4 plus J4. And I'm going to press Control Enter so that it doesn't move to the next cell. It remains on the same cell. Now we want to copy it down. How do we do that? I will select all the cells and we will press the shortcut, which is Control D, D for down. And the formula is copied down. There is an error that you're getting at the end, but that's not important. It's because these values are incorrect. Let's not worry about that right now. It is already bold, right? But let's also try to make it italicized. So I'll make the bold once again, and I'll also make it italicized. Let's stop the recording now. All right, now we go to the practice sheet and let's try to do this here as well. So we will go to macros. We'll select our absolute macro and we click on run. And you notice we are getting the result perfectly. Now let us look at the code that has been generated. Okay, So this is what has been generated, and it's fairly simple to understand. We selected L4. This is escape. So application.cut copy mode equal to false means you press the escape key. Then I selected the cells that were on the left. In the same row, I went 6 columns to the left. I went 4 columns to the left. I went 2 columns to the left. That means if I can show you visually what we did, from here we went 6 columns to the left, we went 4 columns to the left, and we went 2 columns to the left, like this, on the same row. That is what you see here. RC minus 6 plus RC minus 4 plus RC minus 2. Then we selected L4, L17, and then we pressed Control D, which is fill down. And then, of course, we made it bold, and we also made it italic. Very simple, isn't it? But the problem is that what do you do when you want to get the sum of 3 months? You want to copy the formula down and make it bold. That part we understand. But you also want to make it dynamic, which means that you expect the number of columns to increase. So right now, we only have April and May and June. But here we have April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So we are adding more months. This is where it gets tricky. This is where you really have to understand how to make modifications in the code. And you can't really record it, can you? Because what you're recording will only have 3 months in it. And tomorrow, if you have more months in it, and you don't even know how many months are there, you have to be able to find this out dynamically somehow. So this example is going to be a little complex, but then let's take it up as a challenge and then let's try to do it, right? Okay, so what we would like to do here is, the first thing I would like to do is to find the last column that has a value in it. That means I would like to know that the sum has to come in column K. Because remember, we don't know in the other sheet which is the last column. Like here, the last column is T, right? Here it is K. In fact, it should be L where we need it, right? So I'll just put it here. So we need to have the total in column L. But how do we know that it should come in column L? For this, we need to be able to find the last used column. So if I come back to my PowerPoint, I have given you the link here. This one on the spreadsheet guru. And this allows you to find out the last used column in your data, to find the last column. Now, which one is it that we're using right now? So we will be using, let me just quickly see. Okay, let's take this one. Okay. Now we come back to the code. I will create a new module. And let's call this sub absolute macro with moving column, right? And I'm going to paste this, and let me explain what we are trying to do. We are trying to say that in the sheet, in all the cells, I would like to go to a specific row. Which row? We would like to go to the second row, right? So in the second row, I'm going to which column? Sheet column count. That means I want to go to the very last column that we have, this one. There are about 16,000 columns we have. So we are going to the last column. And from that column, we want to come back to the left. And this way we will get to know the last used column. So what are we doing here? We are doing end Excel to left. So think about what we did if I had to do it manually. First, in the second row, we'll go to the last column. And from that, how do we come to the last used column? We will press Control left. That is what we are doing here, right? This is one of the most common pieces of code that you will have to use all the time. Finding the last used row and finding the last used column. But how do we even know that we are getting the correct answer? So let me just put it as a message box, right? And we will say last column, and this can also be the last column, right? Let us run it and see what the result is. So when we run it, it doesn't work. Let me just quickly check it once. So we don't select the sheet here. We will just put columns because we're selecting the active sheet, right? So we click on run and it tells me 12, which is great, isn't it? Because that is the result, right? So if you look at it, this is 5, this is 10, and this is the 12th column that we have. For example, if I had a total written in column Q, answer would have been 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, isn't it? So when I run it once again, you notice it gives me 17. So we are getting somewhere. We have managed to locate the last used column. But the problem is that we have a number, which is 17. I want to convert that into a letter, which is L. How do we do that? How do we convert a number into a letter? Again, if we come back to the PowerPoint, I've given you the link here for WellSR. And here you can see that there is a way to convert a column number to a letter, right? Like this. Let's see how we do this. So I'm going to copy it, come back to the code, and we will paste it here, right? And we will say that we don't need this function here. We will say that the column letter, so we are converting last column to a letter, right? You would have guessed by now that by putting an apostrophe, I'm able to convert this line into a statement, which is green in color. All right, so we are saying column letter equal to split. Again, you don't really need to know how it is working. The only thing is, in the column number, we'll put the number that we already have, which is the last column. Let us run it and see the result now. So I will keep the message box here and we'll make it the column letter. So we run it and it doesn't work because we have a function here. Let me just change it up to the sub. And we get L. Very cool, right? Okay, so we're getting somewhere. We have managed to get last used column, and here we have the convert last column to a letter. The next thing we want to do is we also want to find the last column and increase it by 1 in case you only had the remark and you wanted the total here, but we already have the total, right? So we don't want to shift anything. L is where the result is, which is where the last used column is. That is exactly where we want the result to come as well. So if you notice here, the total is here and we want the result on the same column. So what we will do here is I will quickly come back to my VBA window and we will select the cell where we want to write the formula. And which cell would that be? That would be L4. Now see, we already know the letter, which is L, and we already know the number because the number will always be 4. So all we have to do is we have to say, select cell to write my formula. And here we will say that range. Now it is asking me for the cell 1 and 2, right? So we have to put L4. Now where is L? L is already coming as the column letter, like this. And on top of this, we will be concatenating 4 like this. And we say dot select. So before we write the formula, let's make sure that it is selecting it properly. Let me keep my mouse here. And if I go to developer macros and I click on absolute macro with moving column and I click on run, it shows me L and it also selects L4, right? That's what we wanted. We can also comment the message box. We don't need that. The next thing I want to do is to select from column F till the final column. That means I would like to find the sum of F till K, like this, right? Let's see how we do that. So we will say select from column F till the last column, right? How do we do that? We will say that in my active cell, we are putting a formula. And what will the formula be? It will be nothing but the sum of F4 colon. And now we already know the column letter here, remember? So we can put column letter and 4. But there's a bit of a problem that will come here, right? So if you notice, when I do this, right, let's see how it works. I will say macros and I will say run. It doesn't work. Let me just quickly check that. We might have to close the parentheses here. Let me run it once again. Okay. So you notice it is showing me F4 to L4. But that doesn't make sense, right? Because why is it showing you L4? Think about it. It should not include the cell where the formula is there, right? It should only select till K4. That means we want to select one column less. Now, which means that when we have the last used column, I will also say last used column, okay, -1. And the only thing we'll do here is when I have this, I will just say -1 here, right? And where we are converting this last column to letter, I'll also convert my last column -1 to a letter, right? And let's see the result as well. What happens now? So let me make this last column is here. Let's make this last column -1. And we can also change this to last column -1. This is column letter -1. And this is also column letter -1, right? Let's see if it works or not. Okay, so deleting everything, I will go to macros and select absolute macro with moving column, and we click on run. And it doesn't work, no problem. Let's just make sure that this -1 might be creating a problem. So let me just make it last column 1, right? That would be better. Because -1 will act like an operator, right? It will actually try to do a -1 from that. That might not be correct. So let me change everything to 1 like this. Coming back, macros and run the macro. And you see this time it is working perfectly. It is showing us sum of F4 till K4. Next, we're almost coming to the end of this. We want to select till the last row, right? Now, if you notice here, we want to select till last row. Now, the good part is that we know the final value is in the 17th row. If the number of rows was also dynamic, then similar to how we found out the last column using VBA code, we could have found the last row as well. But in this example, the number of rows are fixed. So that makes our job a little easier. So I can put 17, since that is the last row. So what we'll do here is I will simply say that in my range, which is column letter and 4 and column letter and 17 dot select, right? There has to be a colon here as well. Hold on. So there is something wrong that I've done. Let me just check that. Yeah. And then finally, we'll say we want to copy the formula down, and we'll say selection dot fill down. Let us see if it works or not. Once again, let's delete everything, macros, and then run it. And you notice we get the perfect answer like this, right? Of course, you can make it bold and make all those changes. We will do that as well. So we just want to say selection.font.bold is equal to true. Right. So we are making it bold like this. Let me run it one more time. Okay, but here's the real challenge, right? Will it work on a new sheet where we have 17 rows, but we have a larger number of columns in it? Let us see. If everything works perfectly, we should be able to get the result. So we go to macros and we say macro with moving column, click on run, and it works perfectly. If you notice, it is selecting everything from F4 to S4, and it is showing me the sum. Yes, it's challenging. And when you try to do these things on your own, you will realize it's quite complex. You have to go to a lot of places online, get pieces of code. There's a lot of hit and trial. There's a lot of debugging. Many times you have to create the message box to make sure that the results are coming properly, right? But here's the good part. A lot of it is reusable. In the beginning, everything is new, but over a period of time, you will start to see that there are certain things that you have to use over and over and over again. So it only takes you time the first time to find it and to understand it and use it properly. Once you understand it, it becomes easier as you keep on reusing it other times. So coming back to our presentation, we have seen how we can work with a column which is fixed and a column that is dynamic. Let's also look at absolute and relative recording, right? And then finally, the personal macro workbook. So first we come to absolute and relative. So let me close my file after saving it. So absolute and relative. All right, in this example, we would like to see absolute and relative. Now, when we go to the developer tab, you will see that there is a button called relative references. And it says that, do you want your macro to be recorded and repeated on the same cell, or would you like it to run on a different cell? Let me explain that. We have a very simple data set with us. And what I'm doing here is, if you watch, I will go to record macro. And let's just record it absolute first. So absolute macro. And as you can see, we are simply doing equal to the sum of these cells and then copy it down and we stop the recording, right? If we come here and we try to run the macro, you will notice that it runs perfectly. But what if I come to this part and I try to run it? Let us see what happens then. So if I try to run the macro, after clicking on column P, it still runs on G4, G5, G6, but you're also getting something here, right? It is showing you these cells. But what is happening? One way of thinking about it would have been that it would have worked here, but it is working here. So the question is, which one is correct? Would you have expected it to work in G or in P? The best way to explain that would be to take you to the code. So if you look at the code, we are saying that active cell.formula R1C1 is -5, -1, which means that it is taking me to the 5 cells on the left, which means I'm going to these cells, right? I'm getting the sum. And then I'm able to copy the formula down. But the problem is I'm copying it down in G4, G6. Let me explain that. Look very carefully. If I go to macros and I run it, the first part is working. It is showing me the sum of these cells. because I'm selecting the 5 cells to the left. But the problem is that it is still selecting these cells, G4 to G6, it is not selecting P4 to P6, right? And that is what we want to do. So if I go to my PowerPoint, you will notice here, if you do -5, -1, you're going 5 cells, 5 columns to the left and 1 column to the left, finding the sum, right? But the problem is, we don't want that. What we would like to do is to do this part, right? But how do we do it? The trick here is, we will click on this button called relative references. Please see this. I click on this button, and now I will do the same thing, equal to sum of these 5 cells. We will select and press Ctrl D for down, and we will, oh, I'm sorry, I did not do the recording. So let me do that once again. Record, and we say relative macro. And when I do equal to sum of the cells, and I copy it down, and I stop the recording, and if I run it one more time, it works, right? And if I come to P, and here again I say relative, it works. So it is showing me 6, and then 3, and then 2, right? Like this. In fact, let me change the numbers so that you can see if it is working properly or not. As you can see, it is working properly. One more time, macros, relative, and run. Now, if I look at the code, it's very interesting because when you compare it, you realize the difference. In absolute, what we did was we said -5, -1, which is the formula. The same thing is happening here as well. But if I said G4 to G6, it is selecting G4 to G6 and copying the formula down. But here I'm saying active cell dot range A1 to A3. Now remember, A1 to A3 doesn't actually refer to the cells A1, A2, A3. What it means is that it is from the active cell. So the cell on which I currently am is A1, and this would be A2, and this would be A3. It is all relative to the starting point. That is what we are saying. But there is a problem here. If I go to any other cell, and if I say macros and relative macro and run it, something very strange happens. It is showing me the sum of all the 5 cells to the left. Because that is what we said, isn't it? We said that show me the sum of all the 5 columns on the left. But we don't want that. We would like that it should always select the cell P4 and then do a relative and come down, right? What that means is that I can always mix and match the recording as well. So let me just show you the mixed recording. So if you notice, I'm going to record macro, and I will say mixed macro. First, we will select the cell P4. I will say equal to sum, and I'll select these values. Now I switch to a relative, and I will copy it down, and we'll stop the recording. And if you look at the code, this is what we call a mixed macro, where first we are selecting as a hard-coded cell P4. Then we are selecting the sum, writing the sum, and then we are selecting A1 to A3 as a relative. Now see, you have everything in front of you. There's no right or wrong in this, but I just wanted to show you that just like you can record starting one way and then switch it over to something else in the middle and keep on alternating. Similarly, a lot of code that you would find on the internet would also be like this. This is very important because you have to understand complex real problems are never just relative or just absolute. They are usually mixed. And you have to be very careful when you're reading a code to try and see what part would you like to be fixed and what part would you like to be relative, right? So the only advice I would give you is to be very, very conscious while you're doing these things and pay a lot of attention to it. The final thing I want to talk about is the personal macro workbook. So a lot of people ask me, what do you do when you would like to save your macro in a location such that it is accessible to every single other Excel file? For this, the link has been given here, how to create a personal macro workbook, right? And the personal macro workbook will be shown on all the Excel files. But I'll still give you a small example to show you how that works. So you can see here, when I go to record, there is an option called store macro. Now, by default, we select the current workbook. We can also select a new workbook. And then finally, there is something called personal macro workbook. Let me select that. It doesn't matter what the name is. I'll click on OK, and let's do something. So I'm writing 3 numbers and making them bold, and we stop the recording. And now when I go to the VBA window, you will notice that a new workbook has been created called personal.xlsb. It's a binary workbook. And here you can see that the code is there. And this is great because even if I'm working on a different file, so let me open another Excel file. So if I'm working on a different file and I go to developer and macros, you can see that this macro is still accessible to me. So think of this like a central location where you can keep all the macros and you will be able to use them. In this lecture, we have seen how to record macro, absolute versus relative. And we have seen, using an example, how to use slightly more complex codes, which is finding the last column. Yes, it's a little bit complex, but like I said, the more you use it, the more comfortable you will become. And you'll be surprised to know how often you have to use these things. And then I've shown you the personal macro workbook. In the next lecture, I want to show you recording, but not just on VBA, but how to do recording on VBA, on Typescript, on Excel Online, and also on Google Sheets. Hi, everyone. In this example, I want to show you how macros can be recorded on Excel desktop using Visual Basic for applications, on Excel Online using Typescript, and also on Google Sheets using JavaScript. So let us first do it on Excel. And I'm going to do a really simple example. Put in some values and then find the sum of those numbers. On developer, we will create an absolute reference, so don't select relative references, and go to record macro. Let us call this VBA macro. So we have name, we have sales, we have A, B, C, we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have the sum. Make it bold and also change the color to green like this. And finally, put a heading here. Align everything in the center and stop the recording. So on developer, we will stop the recording. I'm going to do the same thing on Excel Online. So we go online and we will create a new Excel file. And we want to do the same thing. On automate, I will select record actions. Now, depending on the version of Microsoft that you have, so whether you have Microsoft 365, it's a home or an enterprise edition, you might or might not have automate with you. So I would suggest please get Microsoft 365 for this. And if you're working in an organization and you already have 365, but you cannot see automate, please speak to your IT team. So we go to automate and I go to record. And I will say name, sales. We'll say A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3. Then we have the sum of these numbers, make it bold, select everything, put it in the center, and I also change the color to green. And then we can stop the recording here. And finally, let us do it on Google Sheets as well. So let me go to Google Sheets. And I'll create a blank Google Sheet. Here, to record a macro, we will have to select let me just check once. Okay, so we go to extensions and then we say macros and record macro. And we will put name and sales and A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 equal to sum, make it bold, put everything in the center, and put a color here. And finally, we will save the macro. I'm just going to call it test. Okay, now let me open the code that has been recorded for all the 3 applications. So this is VBA macro, everyone. So I'm just going to copy this and put it in my PowerPoint so that we can compare all of these things. Okay, let's reduce it further. All right, so this is my VBA code, everybody. Then right next to it, I'm going to keep the code that has come in Typescript. So on our Excel file, edit, and this is the code. So I'll just copy the entire thing and then come back and paste it in the PowerPoint. And then finally, we also have the Google Sheet that has generated the code for us like this. All right, so let us go full screen and try to understand what is happening. In all the 3 applications, Excel Desktop, Excel Online, and Google Sheets, what we did was to put name, sales as the heading, ABC 1 to 3 as the value, and then we made, we wrote a formula, which is the sum of the 3 numbers, which is 6. We put a color, which is a green color on it, and we aligned everything in the center. So if I look at the VBA code, it says in active cell, we put name, right? So B1, then we have sales, then we selected A2, we put ABC 1, 2, 3. Then this is our formula, R minus 3C, R minus 1C. We made it bold, and we also put a color here. Then we selected A1, B1, activated it, made the font bold, and we put a alignment. In TypeScript, what we are getting is we are selecting a function, which is workbook Excel script.workbook. Then let selected sheet is the active worksheet. So we are selecting the active worksheet and calling it the selected sheet. These are the auto-generated comments. So that's a huge advantage of TypeScript over VBA, that the comments are generated automatically. Plus, you see here, there are so many lines of code. Here, it's just one line. It says selected sheet.get range, A1, B5, set formulas local. So you can see here that I'm creating just a list where we have name and sales A1, B2, C3. Looks very, very neat. And then we're also putting a formula here, which is sum b to b4. The null means that the value that we had next to the sum, so below ABC, that was a blank value. Then we are setting the font to bold for B5. Then we are putting a horizontal alignment and we are putting a color. Here it's a hex code A2EFDA. And if I look at the Google Sheet JavaScript, here also you can see the variable is spreadsheet.getActive. So here we were getting .getActive worksheet. Here it is spreadsheet app.getActive. Here as well, it is similar to VBA in the sense that we have to do it one by one. So we have A1 activate, name, B1 activate, sales, and so on and so forth. The formula is get current cell set formula B to B4. We're making it bold. We're selecting A1. And then some parts might be a little strange. So this dot next and dot down is basically me selecting all the values. And finally, we are putting it in the center. And we are also putting the color here, right, which is the dot set background. So I hope it helps to be able to see all the three alongside each other. And yes, they are different, but the flow and the process is the most important thing. So when you're building a solution for a project, what is important is for you to create a workflow and be able to understand the steps that are required. The code, the syntax, the hit and trial, the debugging, copy paste, all of that is okay. That's the easy part, because we have ways of doing that. But the process, nobody is going to explain to you if you are not able to understand it yourself. So it makes sense to create a chart or create a diagram of some sort to understand the processes and the order of all the steps before doing this. So I hope this helped everyone to see how to record a macro on Excel, TypeScript, and Google Sheets. Hi, everyone. In this lecture, we will look at programming basics. So I'm going to take you through data types, how to format VBA code. We will look at the syntax more closely, the two types of procedures, so a subroutine and a function, using the message box and the input box, conditional statements and loops, and then obviously creating functions using user-defined functions. Now, in terms of data types, it's not like Excel. So what we have on VBA is these data types. So we have a byte, integer, single, long, double, decimal, date, currency, string, object, and Boolean. And everything utilizes a little bit of space. For example, if you look at a byte, it can only have a number ranging from 0 to 255. But the advantage of using this over an integer is that an integer is double the storage space. And if you want to create codes that are more efficient, you want to ensure that you're choosing the appropriate data type. For example, if I choose a double, you will notice that it takes up 8 times the amount of space compared to a byte. As a basic user, you don't have to worry too much about it. In any case, most of your work will be copying codes from the internet, and you will not be working with complex statements and very long lines of code, but it's still important to know what different types of data types are. All right, let us come to the formatter. The website is called the website is called automateexcel.com, and this tool is called a VBA formatter. What it does is it allows you to take any VBA code and then it indents it properly. We will see how to do it when we do the example. We have already seen the syntax earlier, but let's go through it one more time. SUB and end SUB is the subroutine, which is starting and ending. That is why it is in blue color. Show my name is the name of the routine that we have created. You will always have an open and close parentheses. Sometimes there are parameters inside it as well, as we will see in the function example. M, B, A are uppercase because that's the way it is written, but this is autocorrect. So even if you write it with a lowercase, it will automatically become an uppercase. After the dot, you get a dot notation. So these are all the method properties that you have for application. As you can see here, I've also explained and given you a link as well, where you can see in more detail different types of variable declaration. So for example, for a basic variable, we simply say dim as the type. For example, I can say dim, the variable name, let us say being count as long, right? Very simple. Or an amount as currency. For string, we can also have the size. We also have a variant, which means it can pick up any data type. So even if you write just dim and the name of the variable, and you don't define the data type, it picks up a variable, which is a variant. Then of course, we have dim as new. This is used when you are working with classes and collection. This is more advanced. Similarly, when you're using set, sometimes when we are choosing something like a sheet, you want to use a set. Then we have arrays, which I'll be covering later. And then you have bindings. Bindings are more advanced topics when you want to use some dictionaries, when you want to, for example, connect Excel with PowerPoint. Another thing you can do is to write option explicit at the top of your VBA code that will force you to declare everything. So what happens is that if you don't want to declare all the variables, VBA doesn't force you, but it's advised that you should do it, because this way, when you're writing longer, complex pieces of code, you keep better control over it. Okay, in terms of routines, again, subroutine is what you'll be using most of the time, but procedures also have something other than routine, which is a function. Functions are used when you want to create your own functions, like you have functions on Excel. But for a basic user, you will not really be using functions too much, even though I'll be covering many more examples for you. All right, let's start with our first example. So we want to show my name using a message box, a special type of button like this. Let us see. So we go to our file, which is programming basics. I will go to my VBA window. And the first thing we'll do is we'll say sub show my name, and we will say message box. And because we want to show just a simple hi, we'll put it in parentheses in double quote. So we'll say hi like this, and is like a concatenate, what we do in Excel as well when we use an ampersand. And we are using VB cancel. So if you want to say hi and something else, like an application dot username, and if I run it, you will get hi Havish Madhupati. If you want to put a space, as you would expect, just like Excel, you can put a space like this and you get hi Havish Madhupati. If you want to break it into a different line, then you can do and rather than putting a space, we can say VB new line, and this is like an alt enter. It's a line break. So now let me change this as well. So two routines obviously cannot have the same name. So now you get a line here, hi Havish Madhupati, like this. Let's do one more. Now I just want to write hi, nothing else. And this box is like this. This is the message box that we have. But what I want to do here is I would like to use VB cancel, which means if I say VB cancel, you can see there are different types available here. And this way I will get an OK and a cancel button. So you can really control the type of message box that you want to show. And to add one more thing to it, we will also put a default button to see what it does. So we will say plus VB default button 2. Now you notice the default button is the cancel button. Did you pay attention? So if I put it as a 1, then the default is on OK. But if you put it as a 2, then the default button is on cancel, like this. I will again not get into detail here, but the idea is that there are lots of message boxes available, and you should definitely try them out. In fact, let me also share a link with you where you can see all of this. So VBA message boxes. Yeah, and you can see here, you can see different types of message boxes have been explained. I'm not really sure if this is the best link, so let me try to find a different one. Let's go to Excel macro mastery, and this link would be great. I think this would give you a lot of detail on different types of message boxes. So let me just put this link in the PowerPoint as well for your reference. All right. How do you break a code into two lines? We have to use a space and an underscore. This is very common. A lot of codes that you copy from the internet would look like this. Let me show you how we do it. So I'm putting one more. And even though this code is not particularly long, I will still show it to you. So I can put an underscore and then break it into a different line. And as you see, it still works. It still considers this as a single line of continuous code like this. Oh, so I've already given you the link here. In that case, we don't need it in one place. So analysis tab, VBA message box, you can see the different types of message boxes. Now let's see how to pick up the value from a cell and how to push the value to a cell. So first we look at how to take the value from a cell, or let's start with how to write value to a cell. So I would like to put a value in this cell, which is D3. Now there are two ways of doing it. Let me, as a matter of fact, keep the VBA code and the Excel side by side, so it's easier for you to follow it. So I will say sub push value to cell and we will simply say range, and then we can write D3 dot value is equal to hello world. And when we run it, you notice it picks the value here, or rather sends the value on that cell. Another way of doing this would be to say cells, and here I can put two numbers, one for the row and one for the column. So we are right now in the third row and the fourth column. So I can say 3, 4 dot value. And if you notice, if I run it one more time, that works as well. The advantage of the first one is that this is a hard-coded value. If you know this is where you want to send the value. The advantage of the second one is that this is more flexible. It's in your control. While it doesn't tell you immediately what cell it is going to, if you want to make it dynamic, as we saw in the record macro example, you have control over both the row and the column like this. Let's also look at how to pick the value from a cell. I think that should be simple enough. So if I want to pick the value from, let's say, F3, we can say simply say message box range F3 dot value like this. And if you notice, when I run it, it picks the value from, let's say, simple enough. But what if the value is on a different sheet? For example, here I have world written in B2. What do you do in that case? So I will say pick a value from different sheet. Now for this, you have to put the name of the sheet as well, which is what you would have expected, right? So we will say worksheets, and then you put either the number, which is the position of the worksheet, or you put the name of the worksheet, which I feel is easier. So we just say So we will just say second sheet dot range, and our value is in B2 dot value. Let's not make any other changes, run it, and it gives me an error. Let me just check once. So second sheet dot range B2 dot value. Oh, we did not put anything to show the value in. So I'll just put a message box here. Let's reset and run it, and it works. So it is able to pick the value from the other sheet as well. Next, I also want to show you how you can call a function from another function. And since this is very simple, I will not type it. I'll just copy and paste it and then explain it to you. Let us go full screen. Now, if you notice here, we have a message box which is hello, and we have another message box that says world. The first routine is mini function. The second routine is mini function 2. So the 1 and 2. And I'm simply calling them in a third routine. For example, when I run this, it will first show me hello and then show me world like this. This is very important because when you have a code that is running into 15, 20, 50, 100 lines, you might want to break it down into smaller subroutines and then call them. Another advantage of doing this is that sometimes there is a small subroutine that you might be using multiple times. So rather than have to copy paste it again and again, you can just put it one time and then call it as many times as it is required. Let us do this example now with the serial number. This is a slightly more advanced example, but it's a good example for us to practice. Now, if you notice, what we have here are 5 numbers, and we would like to get the serial number, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now that we have a little bit of understanding of the code, let us see how we can deconstruct it and understand it. We are first selecting the cell. Then we are taking from an input box the number. And we are saying that if the value is blank, then we will say no value. Otherwise, we will say if the value has been given and it is a number, then we will say for the value, we will do h and I plus 2. The reason is because my value is starting on the third row. That's why the serial number will come from the third row. Otherwise, we'll say enter a number. Let us get started with it and then we'll make changes to it, right? So we start with a very simple line of code where we say that sub serial number, right? We'll not make it complicated right now, but we'll little by little add more elements to it. So what we would like to do here is I will first select H3, right? So we will say range H3 dot select. Now, after selecting H3, I would like to ask the user what is the last number, right? Now you can either ask the user or you can find it dynamically. But for now, let's ask the user. So we will say that the last value is equal to what? It is equal to an input box and the user is being prompted. So the user is being asked, what is the last value like this, right? So let's not do anything else. Let's run the code. So when I run it, you notice it selects H3 and it asks me what is the last value. But when I click on OK and cancel, nothing really happens, right? So now we will say that for I is equal to 1 to last pass, we're running a simple loop here. Range H, that means let's say the number is 5. So for I is equal to 1, 2, 5. So for every single number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would like to go to the range H, but we don't want to go to H1, right? The first number will come in H3 because H3 is where 1 will come. This is 2 and this is 3. So we'll say H and I plus 2. That means that if I is 1, then what will happen to the value? The value will go in H3. If I is 2, the value will go in H4, like that. Dot value. And what is the value we want? We want I itself, which is the number. And we'll say next I. Let's run it and see what happens. So I will run it. I say 5, and if you notice, it gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there are some issues here. What if the user is not giving a number? What if the user is giving a text value? For example, what if the user gives an A? Now that breaks the code, right? It says there is a type mismatch because we were expecting a number, but we have a text value. So we have to account for all these possibilities, right? And also, what if it is blank? So what if I have put nothing and I say okay, then also it gives me a type mismatch, right? So just like we do in Excel, we have to use an if statement here. So first we will say, if my last val is equal to blank. For blank, we will write VB null string. So if it is blank, then what will be my result? Then my result will be that I will show a message box to the user saying that no value has been given. Or let's give a prompt saying, please give a value, right? Like this. And then we will say, exit sub, else we will run this code. Let me also indent it and we will say end, right? And let us run it and see what happens. So when I run it, okay, there is a end if that is missing. So let me put an end if here. Let us run it. Now, if I do not put a value and I say, okay, it says, please give a value and it closes, which is great. But what if the value that the user is giving is a text value? What do you do in that case? So for that, we have to use another if. So now we'll say one more if. So we say, if is numeric. That means that if my last val is a number, if this is equal to true, then I want to do this. Otherwise, I want to give a message box to the user saying, please enter a number, right? Like this. So we run it and we say A and it says, please enter a number. Everything is working properly. Now let me copy the entire code and we will come to automateexcel.com, which has a VBA formatter. It's wonderful. You just put your code here, click on indent, and it will automatically add the indent cell. Right now, you might not have seen a lot of improvement. That's because I was putting some indents while I was writing the code. But imagine you wrote a code like this, right? If I click on indent, it automatically adds all the indents properly, right? So let me just copy it, come back and paste it here. And as you can see, everyone, this is my complete code. So we're saying select H3, ask the user for an input. If the last value is blank, then tell the user enter a value. Otherwise, if the value given is a number, then run the loop. Otherwise, tell the user, please enter a number, like this. You can also try to do one other thing. What if I want to call the same routine once again? So rather than saying exit sub, I will say call serial number. Think about it. Now when we run it, let me open the Excel file as well. Now when I run it, and I don't put a value, and I click on OK, it says please give a value, and it again goes back to the same routine. Now this makes more sense, right? Otherwise, you will give a prompt to the user saying that you haven't entered a value and the form closes. So how will you take the input? The user is expected to run the macro one more time, right? So what we're doing here is, if you notice, let me cancel it. Oh, but the problem is that if I give it a blank, I will not be able to cancel it, right? That's okay. Let me give it a 5 and then press OK. And we will again say call serial number is coming here as well, right? If you notice carefully, there is one small problem though, which is that if I run it and the user is not giving a value and you click on cancel, it doesn't allow you, right? So this is a very interesting problem because we are stuck in a loop. And unless I give a value, I can't close this form. To handle this, you will have to do something different. We use something called strptr, right? So let me just explain what that is. This is not a very common function that you see other VBA developers use, but then there are certain cases where this will help. And I will again not get into detail here. This is the link that I've shared with you. I'll just copy it and show you how it works. Now, if you notice, it says that there is an input box in which we're asking the user to enter the name. And we are saying that if strptr my input is 0, then we will say you clicked cancel. So it is able to understand that I clicked on the cancel button, even if no value was given. On the other hand, if I clicked on OK, but entered nothing, then a different message will come saying no input was made. And then of course we have a case otherwise, where it tells us what name has been given. Let us give it a shot. So when I run it and I enter Havish, you notice that it works perfectly. Now, if I run it and I click on cancel, it tells me that I clicked on cancel. And if I run it and I click on OK, it tells me that I did not put any value, but I clicked on OK. This is a little more advanced, and most of the time you will not feel that there is a cost benefit to your advantage, which means that the effort it takes you to do it is not worth the advantage that it offers to the end user. And you might stick with the first one and make some changes to it. It's good to know how this works as well. Let's come back to our PowerPoint. So we have seen how the if works in VBA. This is the syntax, everyone. So we are saying if condition 1, then. So the if and the then have to be on the same line. And then we also have an else if, which we don't have on Excel. Then we have an else and we have an end if. You can also do it like this for a loop where we are saying for I is equal to 1 to 10, which is what we did. We said for I is equal to 1 to the last value. And then we are saying next I. This is the loop that we are using. Let us now come to user-defined functions. So let's go back to Excel and let me go to my functions module. So the first function that we need to write is to find the square of a number. Now we do have a function for the square root, but we don't have a function for the square. And that is what we want to do. Now, of course, you can do this to multiply by itself, but then why not create a function? This is how the function will be created. We have to write function, not a subroutine. So it's very simple. We will say function, let's call it square. And then we have to say my input. So you have to define the data type of the input. So we know that our input is a long, which is a number. And the result would be that square is equal to nothing but my input multiplied by my input. And you don't have to register this function or anything. It just works. Now, the moment I write square, I can select the cell and it gives me the square. One limitation you have is that you can't get the prompt. For example, when you put a function like VLOOKUP, you get this description and you get all the parameters. There are some ways you can do this in VBA as well, but it doesn't work quite the way it works with Excel natively. Of course, with the introduction of Lambda now, which you can see in my other courses, you will see that Lambda allows you to do all of this, to create anonymous functions without needing Visual Basic. Just to give you an example on that as well, what I could have done is, if I can just go full screen and copy these values, I can go to my formula and say Lambda. Now, what is the input we are taking? We are taking my input. And then what is the calculation? The calculation, nothing but my input multiplied by my input. Now, it won't work like this, but if I choose the cell, which is C10, you can see it works. In fact, let me just make it B10. You can see that it works. How cool is that? And how do you register this in Excel? Let me just copy it. Go to go to formulas and name manager, and we want to insert that formula here. So we'll create a new name. I will call it square using Lambda, and we'll just paste the Lambda function here. We have called this square Lambda. Let's see how it works. So now we can simply write equal to square Lambda. And here you can actually see the parameter name, my input as well, like this. A lot of things that we used to do on VBA using UDF earlier now can be done with Lambda. You might not find the Lambda on your version of Excel because it's not yet available to all versions of Excel. You will only get it if you are on the current channel. But if you wait for maybe a few quarters, you will definitely get it. But from what I understand, it is only available for Microsoft 365 users. Let's look at our second example. We will look at how to find the GST, right? Now, since we have already understood it, I will not spend time writing the code again. I just explain you the code from here. In GST, we have two parameters or two arguments that we are taking. We are taking my value and we are taking the GST amount. Both are single. It could be long as well. It's a number. And we are simply saying that my GST is equal to my val plus my val multiplied by GST amount divided by 100. As simple as that. So I can say my GST, and if I say F5, comma 18, it will tell me like this. So what is 2,40,000 plus 18% of 2,40,000, like this. This is smart. So this is where we will use an if statement. So what we're doing here is I'm saying that we want to convert the unit of measurement. The objective is that we have these really large numbers here. If I say crores, it should show me the result in crores. If I say lakhs, it should show me the result in lakhs. So it's very simple. We are taking my val, and then we are also taking the unit as a string. Why a string? Because this text that is written in J3 is a string. It's a text value. And very simple. We say that if the unit is lakhs, then we're dividing by 1 lakh. If the unit is crores, then we want to divide by 1 crore. So we will simply say UOM like this. Let's also choose the unit of measurement. So you notice it gives us lakhs. And if I say crores, it gives us everything in gross. Right? So let me do it one more time. UOM gross. Okay, that will not work here. So I'll have to put a $sign here. And if I make it lax, it will be lax. Works perfectly. Let us also look at something which we cannot do in Excel otherwise, which is to be able to count errors in Excel. So let me also share a link with you. So I have mentioned here how you can, put these tooltips in a user-defined function. But like I said, don't expect it to work perfectly. Okay, let's look at the count errors. Now in count errors, what we're doing is we're using an inbuilt Excel function. Now this is very smart because you can create your own functions in VBA using user-defined function. But what if we want to use a function that is already available in Excel? For example, here what we are doing is we are saying that there are these cells that have errors in it. And we are saying we want to count the errors in that range. So this time the cells are a range. We are saying declare the cell as a range, and for each cell in the cells, so we are running a loop, we are saying that if the application.worksheet function .is error. This is so smart, isn't it? If you notice, is error is available in VBA as well, but I would not like to use that. I would like to use the is error that is available within Excel. So if you notice, if I write VLOOKUP, I don't get VLOOKUP, but I can always write application.worksheet function, and that gives me a list of all the functions available natively in Excel, right? So I have XLOOKUP here, I have unique here as well. Now, if you're wondering, Havish, you told us that VBA was a legacy language in 2008, then how does it have a new function like unique, which just came a year or two back? While it is not actively supported, which means that they're not introducing new features and changing the interface and building improvements to it, it is still compatible with everything that you would expect. That's it. So what we are doing is we are saying that if there is an error in the first cell, which means in 0.7337, there is an error. What we are doing is we are saying +1. So what will happen when I go from one cell to the next cell? It is all 0, 0. Here it becomes 1, again 1, 2, and then again 2, and then 3. Let's see how it works. So if I say equal to count errors, in this range, it tells us there are 3 errors. Do keep in mind, you can actually do this in Excel as well. So I could have written equal to is error, and that will give me either false or true, right? And I can put a unary operator, which is a negative sign, 2 times. That will convert everything into 0 and 1. And then I can find the sum of all of these, and it will give me 3. That also works. Also, a question people ask me sometimes is a UDF within a UDF, right? So if you notice, that is also possible. As you see here, function test myval is long, test square myval +2. So what we're doing here is we're taking an input from the user, and the UDF square is making it a square, and then we're adding 2 to it. Let me explain this. So if I come back to the code, see what we're doing here. I'm writing a number 10. And if I say equal to square, it will make it 100. But if I say equal to test, it will make it 102. So how is it becoming 102? Because first, the square is being applied on the value, which is 10. So it's becoming 10 multiplied by 10, 100. And then I'm also adding 2 to it. This is very helpful because you can nest a UDF within another UDF. So there you go. In this slightly long lecture, we have seen 2 types of procedures, routine and functions. So we have seen data types, how to format the VBA code. We have looked at the syntax, declarations, functions and subroutine. We have seen different types of message boxes and input boxes. We have seen how to pick the value from a cell, how to send the value to a cell, and how to pick the value from a different sheet as well. I showed you how to call a function or call a routine from another routine, how to use loops and conditional statement. We saw user-defined function with a single input with 2 inputs. And we also saw how one UDF can be used within another UDF as well. In the next lecture, we will be looking at user forms. So I'll show you how to create applications and software directly running inside Excel files. Hi, everyone. In this example, we will see how to create user forms in Excel. This is what we want to create. There will be a form that has the name and the age in it. We can put in the 2 values, click on submit, and it will automatically create a new record in our Excel sheet. Also, we would like the sheet to be protected so that a person cannot make any change otherwise without using the user form. And we would also like the ability to be able to delete any name if we want. Let us see how we do it. So we will first create a new sheet and let's call it my data. On our VBA window, let us come to the file that we are working on, which is userform.xlsm, and we will insert a user form. Now, in the user form, you will see that we can create these different types of forms. They can be very simple or very complex, and there are different controls available. So let us come back. Now, the form that we are working on is called userform1, which is the name you can see here, and the caption as well. We will change the name. We'll call it entry_form. And in the caption, we will say enter details like this. Let us also change the background color to white. So on my back color, we can make it highlight text so it becomes white like this. We have the toolbox available here. In case you cannot see it or it gets removed or hidden like this, you can always go to the toolbox button here. Next to the help button, you have the toolbox. In the toolbox, we have different types of controls. So we have an image, radio button, checkbox, list box, so on and so forth. Now we need something very simple. So I'm going to take a label and drag it into the form. And since we want the color to stand out, we will change the back color of the label and we'll make it blue. But now the text is not visible. So we can come to the 4 color and we can change it to white. Let us also increase the font size. So in the font option, we can make it 16. That's much better. In the name, we will simply say LBL, the name. That is the convention we follow. So a LBL for a label, TXT for a text, and so on. And then we will also go to text align and align it in the center. So that looks good. And then let's finally change our caption as well. So we will say enter name. Copy and paste it. And then below it, we can write enter age in the caption. And the label can be called as LVL underscore age. Next to this, we will keep two text boxes. So we'll again drag it like this, and then copy and paste and keep it here. The age can be a little smaller in size. This can be a little longer since it's the name. If you want the height to be exactly the same, you can also change the property. So you can see that the height is 30. So I'll make the height 30 here as well, and on this one as well. That looks good. Let's reduce the size a little bit. And we also want to have a command button. So we'll create a command button by selecting our command button, dragging it. And here we can simply say submit. In the font, I'm going to increase the font size to 28. And let's also change the color like this. Excellent. We also want to keep a picture here. So I will select the image option. We'll have to drag and draw it like this. And I'm just going to choose an image that we have with us. So I will go to picture option here in the properties. And then I'm going to select my company logo. So Havisham Consulting, and then company documents, logos, and agency. And in the picture alignment, we can also select, no, alignment should be the same. Let's go to picture size mode, and we will select zoom so that we can see the complete logo like this. That looks good. But the question is, how will this form open on our Excel sheet? For this, we will have to create a module. So insert module, and we will say sub show form, and we will say user form. We have called it the entry underscore form dot show like this. Let's come back to Excel and we'll create an icon here. So let's select an entry, or maybe let's select a form. Yeah, I think that looks good. And we've already seen that we can assign macros to icons and to shapes. So we can right click and assign a macro, and let's assign it to show form. And as you would expect, when you click on this, the form appears. And when you press tab, I'm able to cycle between all these three. That looks great, but there is no code behind it, right? So that's where we have to write the code now. So we come to the form and we will double click on the submit button. So this is the event that is happening. That means that when I click on the command button 1, that's the name that we have given. In fact, let's change that. Let me call it CMD underscore submit. So when we say that we are clicking on the command button, something should happen, right? So let's see what should happen. The first thing is that I would like to put a value in the cell. So we'll simply say put values in the cells, and we'll say that range A1, or let's make it A2 dot value is coming from where? It is coming from my text box 1. Let's also change the text box so that we have a common pattern. So let's call it txt underscore name, and we will call it txt underscore age. So we'll say that from txt underscore name, we are taking the value and putting it in A2, and then in B2, we are taking the value from txt underscore age like this. Let us see if it works. So I can just put name and age here like this. And let me do a double window so that you can see the code and this at the same time. That's much better. So as you can see, we are able to open the form, and I put in Havish and I put my age and I click on submit and the value comes. But this is not quite right, because once the value comes, what we would like is that these two go blank, right? So let's make that change in the code. We will say that after the value has been inputted, we will say remove the old values. How do we do that? We simply say that name dot value is equal to blank, and same way we will say that age dot value is equal to blank. And we will also say set focus on the name, which means that we will say on the name dot set focus. Let me explain that. So when I put in a name and I put in the age and we click on submit, you notice that both of these go blank and the cursor is automatically coming on the name text box, which is what we are doing here by set focus. That is great. But there's a bit of a problem, right? Which is that if I put another name, so let's say Anmol and 34, it is going to overwrite these values because we are putting the value in A2 and B2, isn't it? So we somehow need to make that dynamic. So we will say find the last used row. So my last row is equal to cells rows.count, which means we are selecting till the last row in column A, and we are simply doing end, and then we are saying Excel up. I have already explained this in the previous lecture when we were doing the record macro to find the last column. So if you would like some revision on this, please go and watch the lecture on record macro. But what does this do? It gives us the last row value. So rather than putting this as A2, we will say it is A and my last row plus 1. Because if the last value is in the second row, we want the next value in the third row, like that. Here also we will say and last row plus 1. Let us see if it works. So I will put in Havish and 35, and you notice the value comes in the next row. How cool is that? So Talha 26 comes in the next row. So that is working very well as well. Now what we would like to do here is to protect the sheet so that the person cannot purposely or accidentally make any change to it. So what I'm going to do here is I will first protect my sheet by going to review, and then I'll say protect sheet. And in protect sheet, I will say I don't want the user to be able to select anything. So they can't select locked cells or unlocked cells, but they can click on the image. So they can edit the objects. And the password can be PASS for now. Let's keep it simple. One more time, PASS. Now you notice that I can't do anything. I can just click on this. But the problem is that when I enter some values, it throws an error. And think about it. We are trying to put a value, but because the sheet is protected, it is not able to do that, which is a good thing, isn't it? So what we'll do is first we will unprotect the sheet. And this is very simple. We will say, let's declare our worksheet as WS. And then we'll say, no, we'll have to set, not dim. Set WS as worksheet. So first we have a dim, and then we say set WS is equal to which worksheet. So we are putting the name of the worksheet here, and the name of the worksheet here is data. So we'll put data here. So what it does is it selects the sheet, but now we want to unprotect it. So we'll say ws.unprotect, and the password here would be equal to PASS, like this. But after the entire code runs, we also want to protect it back again, obviously. So after the code is executed, we want to again come back and say dot protect, like this. Let's see the complete action once. So I will put a name, we put the age, we click on submit, and it says there is a duplicate declaration in the current scope. Okay, wait, we don't have to put this, we don't have to put it one more time. So let me not just put this again. We just need to write this line, right? Okay, so we write Sanjay, let's say 33, and submit, and you notice it is working. And the best part is that originally the sheet is protected. As you can see, I can't select anything, let alone change it. It unprotects it, it adds the value, and then it protects it back again. And everything is happening instantaneously. So the end user doesn't really know what happened, which is how we wanted it to work, isn't it? Now we would also like to have an option to be able to delete any of the names that we have. So I'll just copy this one more time, and we will say this is delete, and let's change the color as well. So we'll change the color to red. And in the command button one, no, we want to change the name. So let's call it cmd underscore delete. So when the user selects cmd underscore delete, what will happen? When the user selects this, it will say which name to delete, right? So we want to ask the user, which name do you want to delete? So we'll say that my name is equal to input box, and we will say which name do you want to delete, like this. Now we need to find the row number of that name which is there. So we will say find row number for the name, and we will say set my name row num. That means the variable we are creating is called my name row num, and we are searching in column A, like this. And what are we doing? We are simply doing a find, like we do with a Control F in Excel. We are doing a find here, and what are we finding? We are finding my name. Okay, now we say row num to delete. That means once it tells me, once it locates the cell, it tells me, for example, Havish is in A3, but I don't need A3, right? We just need the row number. So we will say my name row num dot row. So from A3, it will only give me 3. And then finally, just to confirm to you it is working properly, I'll also say message box row num to delete to confirm to you that it is working properly. I click, I say delete, I say I want Havish, and you notice when I click on OK, it says 3, which is what the correct result is, right? Havish is in the 3rd row. All right. Now, once we know the row number, we just have to delete it. So we'll say rows, and we'll say row num to delete, and a colon, and once again row num to delete dot select, and then we say selection dot delete shift Excel up. This is equivalent of saying that we are doing a selection of the row. Let me just unprotect it to show it to you. This is as good as saying that we are selecting the row and we are pressing Control minus. That's what we are trying to replicate in the VBA code as well. And once this happens, we again want to open the form. So we will again say, let me see if this will work without it as well. So if I delete Anmol, it says delete method of range clause failed. No problem. Let us check where the problem is coming. Selection dot delete. Everything looks all right. Let me just check a little carefully. Might be because of a small issue. Okay, let me try to change the S to capital here. Let's try it once again. So if I go to delete and I say I want to delete Anmol, yeah, you see that it tells me the number and it still doesn't work. Let us see why. It can also be possible because the sheet is protected. So that seems likely. Let me also do this one more time. So I will unprotect and protect the sheet here. Let's call it protect, and we have protect like this. And let us run it one more time. So we say delete, we say, let's say Havish, and we press OK. It says 3, it selects the row. And as you can see, it deletes it. And once again, it reprotects it, right? So that is what we're doing here, everyone. We first unprotect the sheet. We find the name using .find. Then we find the row number. We don't need the message box anymore. And then we select the row and then we simply delete it, right? Very simple. Now, of course, there are many other small things that you can do. For example, when the form opens, you notice that I cannot click on any cell within the sheet. Now, one reason for that is that it is protected, but even otherwise, you cannot select any sheet, any cell on the sheet. The reason for that is that in the form, you will have to make sure that in properties, you're selecting this show modal and you're making it false, not true. What this means is that when the form opens, I can take my cursor and click on the cell. Right? Let me show that to you properly. First, let me unprotect the sheet. You notice that even when the form is open, I can still select the cells, which is very important to know because many times you might want to have control over both the sheet as well as the form that you have created. Also, on the form itself, you can make changes. So when the form is initializing, you can have actions on it. For example, there is a message box or the color changes or the size changes, something like that. So please explore. This is just a simple example, but then once you start to add more elements to it, you will realize how much is possible by using user forms. Let me give you an example of a project that I did for a client a while back. As you can see here, we created an entire form for the client. And this is my Excel file. You can see that it's a very clean Excel. There is no sheet list. There is no scroll bars that appear on the left and on the right and at the top. There is no status bar. And when I click on vendor master, it creates a vendor master like this. I have a find here. I can search for any name as well. It shows me the details. I can also go left and right. I can also edit and add record or delete records. Then we also have a PO option where I can put in the purchase order number and it automatically is able to show me the details for that PO. Again, we can edit and add and delete it. And if we print it, in one click, it manages to print it for me in a format. This was just to show you the possibilities that you have with Visual Basic. Visual Basic is a fantastic tool. And what we have done might be a simple example, but this is a great example. This is your journey towards learning user form. But remember that expert VBA users can do some amazing things using user forms. So please make sure to go online and see what others are doing and then little by little, try to keep on improving the quality of your user form. Hi, everyone. In this lecture, we will look at dealing with errors. I'm very confident that you have been practicing every example in this course. You would have faced errors every now and then. It's a part and parcel of being a programmer where errors happen. It is expected or unexpected, but it will happen. And the ability to handle them, the ability to identify them, and then over a period of time, learn how to minimize them is very important. When you are an Excel user, errors really are not a very big problem because there are a certain number of errors like name, div0, reference, and we know why it happens. And it's easy to trace why that error is happening. In VBA, it is not like that. In VBA, you really need to understand why that error is happening if you want to fix it. But there are things you can do about it to ensure that you are proactively ensuring you catch all these errors. But before we look at errors, I would like to focus on the debugging and the immediate window. So let me open an Excel file and we will save it on the desktop. And let's call this debugging immediate and errors. All right, so let us go to our code window and we will insert a module. We will first create a simple subroutine where I say that sub serial number, and we will say that for I is equal to 1 to 10, we would like to create the value in the cell. So we will say that in the cells, what is the row number? It is I. The column number is fixed at 1 dot value is equal to I, and then we say next I. It's a very simple piece of code. And when we run it, let's see what happens. When I run the code, we get 1 to 10 like this. What I will do is I'm going to say debug dot print I, and we will go to view and open the immediate window. And what happens here is that as I run the code, these numbers are populated in the code as well. And that is very, very helpful. Because what this means is that you're able to test out certain parts of your code directly here in the immediate window. Now let us also look at creating a breakpoint. So if you notice, when I right click in this bar, in this gray bar, there is an option called breakpoint and bookmark like this. Let's see what these are. Now imagine I have another piece of code like this, and this is putting the values in the second column. So if we run it, you notice that it is coming in both A and B like this. But I would like to test it one by one, which means that I would like to just click on this point. And now when we delete everything and we run it, it just shows me 1. What that means is that it is executing everything before this point. So what we are going to do here is to keep a line here, and let me run it one more time. So when we run it, now you notice it only shows me from 1 to 10. It is not running the second part. So that is also very helpful to be able to control till what point you want the code to work. So especially when you have a very large piece of code and you're facing some issue, it will help to break it down into smaller chunks and put a breakpoint test, maybe the first 10%. And that way you can isolate the part where the problem is coming from. This is also very, very helpful. But what about errors? Now, if you notice here, if I say I is equal to 1 to 10, and I wrote an A here by accident, when I run it, it doesn't run that, right? It is not able to run that piece of code. But if I say cell A2, then it gives me an error. It tells me that application defined or object defined error. If you go to debug, VBA is pretty smart at figuring out the line where the error might be coming from. But then again, you can't rely on it all the time. And even if you know the line where the error is coming, you still need to know how to fix it. Let me give you one example, and then I'll tell you where you can find other things from. So I can say on error, resume next. What that means is that if it finds any error after this point, it is going to ignore it. It is not going to give me a prompt. It is just going to ignore it. If you notice, when I click on run, it doesn't show me any prompt that there is an error. This is very dangerous because this means that you will not even get to know that there was an error in your operation. So please use it very cautiously. But if I can come to the link on Excel macro mastery, you can see that there are different types of errors or rather different types of error handling that you can do. Let me just open this for you. And you can see here that it has been explained in a lot of detail how all of these things work. Broadly, there are three types of errors that happen: syntax, compilation, and runtime. Syntax means that you have not written something properly, like this. Compilation means that you have written an if without an end if, for example. And of course, runtime errors are errors that happen when you're running the code. An example would be that you're trying to read the data from a database, but the database does not even exist. That's when the error will happen. While talking about errors might not sound very exciting, it is extremely important for you not to ignore this part. Speaking from personal experience, I was very passionate about writing code, but I would also cut some corners when it came to reading about errors. And it is very important to learn how error handling works, what is possible, not possible in VBA. And don't assume that it's like other programming languages, because the object model in Excel is very different. Please make sure to read it proactively before you start working on projects. The problem is that a lot of people feel that we will search for the error the day it comes, which is an okay approach, but then don't you feel that you should also know why errors happen so that you're able to handle them even before they happen in the first place? To cut it short, please focus on this link and make sure that you go through it completely. You don't have to memorize everything, but just get a sense of how errors happen and how to fix them, so that the day the problem comes in, you don't have to go running here and there to be able to come up with a solution. Hello, everyone. In this example, I want to show you how to work with arrays. Arrays are a fundamental concept in programming. And it is not just on VBA, but other languages as well, that using arrays is very, very important. And I'm going to show you how to do this natively on Excel and how to do it on Visual Basic as well. But like I said, the fundamentals remain the same. And you should be able to utilize these learnings when you're working on other languages as well. First, let me show you how to do this natively on Excel. Let's say we have 5 numbers here. I'm just going to make them a little different. like this. Now, if I say equal to index, and I take this complete array, if you notice the parameter, it is an array, I can access any row and any column number. Now, since there is only one column, I can only put the row number here. So I'll put a 1 and it gives me the first value. If I say 2, it gives me the second value. If I put this inside a curly bracket, if I say 1, 2, it will give me 45 and 56. If I say 1 semicolon 2, it will give me 45, 56 like this. That is the concept of how arrays work in Excel. Let me give you one more example. In curly bracket, if we write 1, 2, we get 1 and 2 like this. And if I say 1, 2, semicolon 3, 4, we get 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. So the comma means it's a different column and the semicolon means it's a different row altogether. Now let us look at Visual Basic and see how we can use the concept of arrays. So sub arrays, and the first thing I'll do is I'll say dim my array range as a variant. Then I say dim, and we will select the row as an integer. And then in our range, the values that we will put are from A1 to A5. So we'll simply say A1 colon A5. And now I want to loop through all of them. So I will say for the row is equal to 1 to the U bound, which would be the upper bound of my range. What do we want to do here with this loop that is running? We would like to simply do a debug print. Since we want to show these values in the immediate window, so debug print, and in the debug print, we will say iRow, 1 like this. So as you can see, my immediate window is completely blank. First, let me show you how it works. When we click on run, it gives me an error because the spelling is not correct. Let me do it one more time. Okay, this should be next. All right. Okay, as you can see, it is able to pick up all these 5 values like this. So what are we doing here? We are first declaring our range, which is a variant, and then the row as an integer, since we have to loop through all the 5 rows. And then from the range A1 to A5, I'm simply saying that from 1 to the upper bound, which means from 1 to 5, I would like to show all the 5 values. Of course, the topic is very detailed, and one link that I recommend all of you should see is on Excel Macro Mastery on arrays. Do keep in mind the topic is a little complex, so don't worry if you don't get it the first time. But then you have to use arrays for more complex problems, because even if you can do it some other way, it is going to be so much longer and so much more inefficient. And arrays are the correct way of going about it. So this is the link. It is also there on the PowerPoint, and you can sort of read about arrays from here. Hello, everyone. In this lecture, we will look at Introduction to REGEX. Those of you who come from a programming background would definitely have heard of regular expressions. But first, let me explain what they are. So regular expression is a staple in various data cleaning projects. And what it essentially does is it does a pattern or a string search algorithm. So when you get a lot of unclean data with you and you would like to parse it in a certain way, regular expression allows you to do that. I would strongly suggest that you go and have a look at the Wikipedia article. It's a little technical at times, but it's very interesting to go through it. Now, as you can see, regular expressions are not something specifically for Excel. As a matter of fact, there are very few Excel developers who I know who work on regular expressions. The topic by itself is very, very advanced and also very complex to learn. As you can see, these are the type of regular expressions that you have to write, where the characters and the combinations refer to different things. But let us look at an example right now. So I will come to an Excel file and let's save it on the desktop. And let's call this Introduction to Regular Expressions as a macro enabled workbook. Perfect. So let's go to the code window and I'll show you directly here itself. So let's create a module first. We don't need this. Yeah. And I'm not going to write it. I'm just going to copy the code that I already have and then walk you through it. Now, the first thing we are doing is to create an object, which is my regex, regular expression. So we are using set regex to create that object. And then the pattern that we are giving is 123-09 plus. I'm not going to even attempt to explain it to you right now. Like I said, it's a very nuanced and a very detailed topic. But I want to show you the result that you get. And think to yourself, what other ways would you have had to get a result like this? So if you notice, when I run it, let me also put this in a subroutine. Look at the immediate window. We are getting 123-000 because that's the pattern that we wanted. 123-643 and then 123-888. That means that the 123, which does not follow with a hyphen and some numbers, is not picked up. Similarly, this is also not picked up. Let me try and see if I can find a different example for you as well. So look at this. Now, do you see this parentheses around the second sequence, around the 0 and 9? Now see what it does. When I run it, let me do it one more time. You will see that the results are 123-000-000, 123-643-643, 123-888, and 888. How cool is that? So what is happening here is that first we are getting the result, which we were getting earlier, the 1 to 3 followed by a hyphen and 3 numbers. And also I'm able to do a sub match, which means I'm only able to get the 3 numbers that follow the hyphen coming after the 1 to 3. So look at the sort of things you can do with it. And it is impossible to do these things with Excel formulas otherwise. And that is the reason why this pattern recognition is very, very important. One link that I would suggest all of you go through is on Analyst Cave. And you can see that here, regex has been explained in quite a lot of detail. And these are the different matching characters that you have. And then you have concepts like greedy and non-greedy. I'll not get into it in too much detail right now, but then keep in mind that this is a very detailed topic, right? So not something you can do in a hurry. But I feel everybody has some use cases for it. I don't think there's anybody who never requires regular expression. Maybe you don't realize it. Maybe you end up writing a complicated, complex Excel formula, or maybe you end up doing stuff manually without even realizing that there are a lot of pattern recognitions that you can do with regex. So definitely have a look at it. Hi, everyone. In this lecture, we will look at how we can create an add-in on Microsoft Excel and put our own VBA codes in it. Let us start with an Excel file. And what I'm going to do here is to save it as an XLAM file. If you go to File and Save As, you will see that there is an option called Excel add-in, which is XLAM. This is a good way of ensuring that you are able to share your VBA code with everybody in your team. And this is a way also of deploying your add-ins. If you remember, we discussed the personal macro workbook when we were doing the record macro. Now, the personal macro workbook is great for you because on your system, those VBA codes will appear on all the Excel files. But what if you want to share all your files with somebody in a single file that they can sort of install on their computer and start working with it? Let us see how we do it. First, I'll save this file on my desktop. And we will say VBA for XLAM, so that we know that this file will end up getting used for a XLAM. But for the moment, we will save it as a macro-enabled workbook. And we just need to put any sample macro in it. So let's go to Visual Basic. And here in, let me close all the other things. All right, so here in our file, which is VBA for XLAM, which I can't seem to find for some reason. Let me reopen it. Okay, so here we will insert a module. And in this module, we are going to put a simple code. So I'll say sub. In fact, let us do one thing. Let us create a function, right? So I'll create a function and we will call the function ABC and we will say my input as long, which means it's a number. And the result is ABC is equal to my input multiplied by my input. So we are essentially finding the square. That's also called as ABC square, and then we'll call this ABC square. Once we have done this, we will also create a subroutine. So again, I'll call this ABC underscore name. And in this, we will say message box hi, like this. First, let us make sure that these things are working. So if I put it as ABC underscore square, you see the function is here. And also if I go to macros, there is a macro called ABC underscore name that says hi back to me. Now we want to save this as an XLAM. So file, save as, and select XLAM. If you notice carefully, the moment you select XLAM, there is a specific folder that has been selected, which is users, Havish, app data, roaming, Microsoft, and add-ins. If you open it, you can see that I already have a few XLAMs add-ins that I've created here. And this is called VBA for XLAM. So I will save it like this. What this means is that if I open a new Excel file and we have closed this one, right? So as you can see, I only have a single Excel file open on my system at the moment. If I put a number and if I say equal to ABC, it doesn't appear. If I press Alt F8, again, you don't seem to find the macro. While you have saved the XLAM, you still have to enable it. And that is the reason you can't see it right now. So we go to developer and we go to Excel add-ins. And if you notice, this is the VBA for XLAM file that we created. So we'll just check and click on OK. The moment you do that, if I now say ABC square, you notice it works. And if I go to my macro names, and you see that I have all the options that have been given here, you can't see the macro here, right? which seems to be a bit of an issue. But if you go to the VBA window by pressing Alt F11, do you see this on the left corner? Let me minimize everything. You can see that the VBA for Xlam is available here. So this VBA code can be seen at any point of time, and you can of course copy it and put it in a module in the sheet. Of course, there are ways of making it public and adding it to the ribbon at the top that has been covered in a different video. But then this by itself is a great way of storing all your VBA codes in a single location and being able to share it with different people in the organization. Hi, everyone. In this example, I want to show you how you can connect Excel and PowerPoint using VBA. Let us look at a use case. Imagine that you have 15 charts on Excel and you want to send them all across to PowerPoint, either as a picture or as a chart, which has been linked to the Excel file. Usually you will have to do a copy and paste. In this example, using Visual Basic, I want to show you how you can automate this work. Do keep in mind that it is going to be a little complex because we are working with Visual Basic and not just on one application, but on two different applications, Excel and PowerPoint, but definitely worth the effort. So what we have here is an Excel file which has 3 charts in it. So we have a clustered column, we have a pie chart, and we have a 100% column chart. The objective is to get these charts into this presentation that I have with me. Since we are going to work on Visual Basic, you will need to enable the developer tab. To do that, go to File, and then at the end, select Options. Then go to Customize ribbon. And finally, check this option called Developer. The moment you check this option, you will see that the Developer tab has appeared. Now you can go to the first option in Developer called Visual Basic. And in this window that opens up, you will see that we have the file on which we are working, which is Excel send to PowerPoint. Right click and insert a module. And here we will copy the code which has been given to you. These codes are available on GitHub, and you can find the link to GitHub in the description. Let us start with one of these. Now, before you copy the code, you will have to go to Tools, References, and then select the PowerPoint library. This is what we call early binding. And then later in this example, I will also show you how to do a late binding. So go to Tools and then select References, and then scroll down all the way till you find Microsoft PowerPoint and just select this. So I have Microsoft PowerPoint 16.0 object library. Remember, you have to select the library to be able to copy the code and run it. In the final 2 examples that I cover, I will also show you how you can do this without using this reference by doing something called late binding. So I'm going to select charts to presentation, multiple slides. This is how the code looks. Let's just copy the entire thing, come back to the module and paste it. Now you will see that we have selected our Excel We also have our active PowerPoint, which is this one. And the moment I run the code by clicking on this run button here, that would be the green arrow. In one click, the three charts have gone from Excel to PowerPoint. You might notice that on the left side, the pane to select the slides might not be there. That gets hidden by default. So just make sure to select the second button here, which is your slide sorter, and then come back to the normal mode. As you can see, there are three charts which have got pasted as images on three different slides. Let's delete everything. Let me show you a different code. So this was where we wanted the charts on multiple slides, but what if you want them to be on a single slide? If you want them on one slide, copy the code. Let us paste it here. Once again, I have my Excel file and I have my PowerPoint. And the moment I click on the run button, you will notice that this time the three charts have come on a single slide. Let us now go to one more code. So here we have only the selected charts. Copy the code. Let's paste it and run it. Now this time you notice that I'm only selecting the pie chart and the clustered column. And when we run the code, it asks me what is the scaling factor. So 100 here means that you want the chart to be the same size. 120 means 120% of the original size, and a 90 means 90% of the original size. So let us keep 110 here. And when I click on OK, you will notice that in the PowerPoint, we have both the charts, but only the two charts that I selected, not all the charts on my sheet in Excel. Now let's also look at how we can get these charts from Excel to PowerPoint using late binding. So if you recall, when we selected the references and we selected the PowerPoint reference, that is what we call an early binding. This is with a late binding. Once again, I'll copy the code and paste it here. If you notice, in Tools, References, we have selected the PowerPoint 16 object library. I'm going to deselect this. And when I click on Run, you notice that the chart has got pasted, but only as an image. If you would like to paste this as a linked chart, then you can select late binding with link. Let's copy this. And now I have a chart selected. When I run the code, you will see that it has been linked with the Excel file. So there you go, a few different variations on accomplishing the same task. Of course, you might have more specific requirements. For example, you want to go through all the charts in all the sheets and then copy it on PowerPoint. You might want to take the chart title and put it as the presentation title as well, or the slide title as well. So all these things are possible, but of course it requires a little bit more effort and some tweaking in the VBA code as well. So this is how you automate Excel and PowerPoint, and definitely explore the tweaking of these codes to accomplish the task that you have. Hi, everyone. In this example, I want to show you how you can rename all the files in a folder in a single click. This is on face value not a very difficult task. And if there are 5 or 10 files with you, you can go and do it manually. But if you have a larger number of files, it is quite difficult to go to each file and change the name. For example, here we have a certain number of files and I want to add a serial number before each of the files. So if you want to add this 1 underscore, 2 underscore, and so on, we need a way to automate this process. Here I have a folder with me and there are 15 files in it. And the files can be of different types. And this is the Excel file that has been given to you, which already has the macros in it. First thing, we have to copy the path of the folder and paste it in D2. And remember to put a slash at the end. After the name of the folder, a slash is required. There are 2 macros now. One is for getting the names of all the files in the folder, and the other is for renaming all the files. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to keep my folder and my Excel next to each other so that we can see what is happening. All right. So when I click on Get Names, you will see that a list of all the names have been populated here. Let us put a new name now. So we will add a sequence with the count A of column A minus 1. And then let us use flash fill. So 1 underscore animations and morph dot pptx, Control E, and there seems to be one small problem here. Let's fix that. Right, this seems okay. All right, now that we have the new names with us, you simply have to click on the Rename Files button. And as you can see, in a single click, when I click on Rename Files, it gives you a prompt saying that all the files have been renamed successfully. And if you look at the folder, you can see the new file names. So there you go, a very easy way to get a list of all the file names from a folder and be able to rename it in a single click. Hi everyone. Today I want to show you how you can create your own custom ribbon in Excel. As you can see, we have a custom ribbon here, which has a Visual Basic code running at the backend. And there is also a hyperlink to go to the website. In this video, you will learn how to create custom ribbon using XML, how you can connect VBA codes to the XML, and how you can deploy it to end users. It is going to be a little complex and a little long, so be patient, but this is something which very few Excel users are aware of. So this can really help you have that USP. All right, let's get started. This is what we are trying to create. As you can see, I have a custom ribbon here. And in this, we have a toggle reference button and a go to website. When I click on the go to website, it simply takes me to the hyperlink. And if I click on toggle reference, you will see that my columns, which are currently A, B, C, D, E as letters, they get changed into numbers. And this is very handy because with letters, when you write a formula, it simply tells you sum of B2 colon B4. But if you want to see the formula relative to the other cells, you can toggle the reference and now it tells you that you're selecting 3 rows above in the same column and 1 row above in the same column. While there is a way to change this reference in the options as well, this is a much quicker way of doing it by simply selecting toggle reference. And of course, this is an example. You can put anything that you want in the Visual Basic code that is running at the backend. Okay, let's get started. The first thing I want to do is to create an Excel workbook. And because we are going to keep some VBA codes in it, make sure to save it not as an Excel file, but as an Excel SM file, a macro-enabled workbook. So I'm going to save it on my desktop, and I will call it Excel custom ribbon, and we will save it as a macro-enabled workbook. Once this is done, we need to get the VBA code with us. You have to enable the developer tab for that. So please go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and then select the developer option. So you have to go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and then tick the developer option. In this, you can select the first option called Visual Basic, and then identify the Excel file on which we are currently working, which is Excel custom ribbon. Right click and insert a module. And in this module, you can paste the VBA code that I've shared with you. You can find it in the GitHub repo. And this essentially is what we are pasting here. I will also explain what these things are. So the first one is a user-defined function where we are able to count the number of words in a cell, because Excel doesn't have any other way of doing that. The second one is the toggle, which helps me change my reference style from A1 to R1C1. That means rather than seeing A, B, C, D, E, we want to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the columns. And the go-to website is a macro that simply follows the hyperlink. It takes me to this website. You will also notice that here we have written control as iRibbon control pressed as Boolean, because we are creating a macro that will be enabled via the XML ribbon. So we're not running it directly. If you have worked with macros earlier and you click on macros here, you notice that it doesn't appear in the list of macros. The reason is that this can only be enabled when I would click on the ribbon. And this is pressed as Boolean because it's a toggle. So it is either yes or no. And because the first one is a function, it will be text underscore count underscore words. The first one we can test out even now. So for example, if I've written, hello, how are you doing? I can simply say equal to text underscore count underscore words, and it tells me that there are 5 words that we have written. Let us save this. So we already have the VBA code with us. Now we will need to download a software. So I will go to RibbonX. So this is the software with which we have to work. It's called the Office RibbonX editor. All right. So this is available on a website called bettersolutions.com. And you can also find a lot of documentation available on the ribbon on this website. It doesn't look very interesting, but it's a fantastic website. So this is the link, everyone. I can simply go here to GitHub. And from here, I can download the RibbonX editor. So I have already downloaded it on my system, and it looks like this. So it's a very simple IDE. It's an environment where you can write the code, but it's very simple. It doesn't have a lot of features in it, but it has everything that you would need to work on. The first thing I would like to do is to open the Excel file, which is Excel custom ribbon. Please make sure to close the Excel file before you open it in the ribbon editor. So I will open it, and you can see the file is here. Now we would like to go to insert, and we will insert a sample XML, which is a custom tab, since we want to create our own tab on Excel. And you can see here that it has created a custom XML where the tab is called Contoso. We are looking at the group clipboard and the group font. Then I've created a custom group called Contoso Tools. Then we have kept 3 different actions here. So bold, italic, and underline. And then we also have data alignment, data number, and data formatting. Let me explain what this is. Let me save it and then open the Excel file, which is this one. And you can see that now a tab has been created called Contoso, and you can see all the options have been given here. The macros don't really work because there is no macro at the back end, but you get the idea that all these options are coming because they are the inbuilt options that we already have in Excel. But what we would like to do is to put our own macro and then connect it to the ribbon, right? So let us go back to the ribbon editor. I will open the file. Now I have already given you the code that you have to copy and paste. So this is the code, everyone. And let me increase the size. So the first line is not something you tamper with, that is the schema. Then you have the tabs here. That means that you're putting a custom tab. The ID doesn't have any relevance. You can keep anything in the ID. The label is what will be present to the user, right? So you can see here that we are calling it custom ribbon. And where do we want to insert it? After the home tab. So in the order in which Excel tabs are there, between home and insert, it will appear. Then I'm creating a group, and the group is called change reference. There is a button, and the image is HMC. I'll tell you how to do that. The size is large, the label is go to website, and the on action is the macro. So if you remember, this is the macro that we had written in the Excel file. One was macro underscore change reference to R1C1, the other was go to website. Now, how do we get this image here? So you can see that I already have the image with me. So this is my logo. Remember, this has to be in 32 by 32 pixel. So you can use any image editor, but make sure that the resolution is 32 by 32 pixels. Okay, so we want to add our icon here. So I will insert the icon and I will select hmc.png. Now this icon has been mapped with the XML, and we can put the name here without the .png. So just the HMC, which is the name before the extension. If you would like to check that everything has been done properly, you can also click on validate. And it tells you that the custom UI XML is well formed. That means it cannot detect any errors that are there. Let me close this. And we do want to save the changes. I will open the Excel file, and now you notice we have a custom ribbon. We have a toggle reference, and it will toggle between the macros. I can also go to the website, and it acts like a hyperlink, and it takes me to the website. And you can put any VBA code behind it. This website, Better Solutions, has a lot of explanation of how there are different types of objects available in the ribbon. So what are the controls that are available? So you will have a button, you will have a drop down, you will have a group. So this is the best website for it. The next thing I would like to talk about is how would you share this with other people, other users? Let us say you have 5 people in a team, or you have to send it to a client. Right now, everything has been mapped with my current Excel workbook. That is it. Let us say I would like it to be enabled for all the Excel workbooks that I'm working on. So I will go to File and then Save As. And in this, I'm going to select the option called XLAM, which is Excel add-in. It's a little down in the list, so you'll have to scroll down and you will find XLAM, which is an Excel add-in. Once you get the Excel add-in, it will open a specific folder, and I will just copy the path as well, Control C, and we want to paste it Excel custom ribbon as a XLAM. So let me save it here. Once we have done that, let me close my Excel file and open a new Excel file. On the new Excel file, I will select Developer. We will go to Excel add-ins. And here you will see that we have our custom ribbon available here. Click on OK. And that is it. Now this custom ribbon is available on every single Excel file on your computer. As you can see, working perfectly. So this is one of the ways of sharing it with multiple people. You can put it as an XLAM and send the XLAM to everyone. Keep in mind that the XLAM has to be pasted in this specific folder. So typically it would be the directory, users, the name of the person, app data, roaming, Microsoft add-ins. It can differ from system to system, but in most systems, it would follow the same path. If you're having trouble finding that folder path on any Excel, when you try to save as, and you select XLAM, you can copy the folder path from here as well. So there you go, everyone. This is how we have managed to create our own ribbon using XML. If you want to write longer pieces of code, then you can edit it in any IDE of your choice. Let us say Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code as well. That will make it easier for you to work with it. That would be all. I hope you have fun playing around with it. Hi, everyone. In this example, I want to talk about Outlook automation from Excel. Now, of course, there are many different variations to this. Do you want to send the current Excel file? Do you want to attach a different Excel file? Do you want to attach multiple Excel files? Do you want to send it to one person or many people in a list? In this particular example, I'm only going to focus on sending the current workbook, which is the active workbook, to one person. But this is the basic skeleton, and you can always build additional elements into it in case you want to send it to other people. This is not an advanced example. If you're already a VBA user, this is meant for people who are trying out VBA for the first time, for you to get a feel of how automation can be done. And once you get the hang of it, you can always upskill yourself and then learn the more advanced methods as well. So the problem that we have here is that we have an Excel file and we would like to send this via Outlook. So we click on send email. There is a user form that asks me for the input details. So we have a CC, BCC, subject, and body. We can also use the default values. In this particular example, I've taken the default values as my email, one of my other emails. The subject is the current date and time and the file name. And then finally, we have the body. I will also tell you how to modify these elements in the VBA code, and you can always connect them to your Excel file as well, so that you don't have to type all of these values. They get picked up automatically. But for now, let's click on submit and see what happens. So you can see that the time is 2:07, or rather 2:08. We will click on submit, and it gives us a message saying the email has been sent successfully. Let me go to Outlook and show you what has happened there. So if you go to Outlook and I go to send, you will notice that at 2:08 p.m., this email has been sent with the attachment. Here we also have the text, which is hello, please find latest and updated file. And we also have the subject line to havishrao@gmail.com. And just to confirm that I really have received the file, you can also see that we have received that email here. All right, now let's go to the VBA code and see what is happening. Let me focus on the parts that are important. So this is where we are choosing the file path, which is the current file path. And we also have the file name. And if you notice, in the file name, we are prefixing the text copy of, then we are taking the file name and we're also adding the date and time, the current date and time. Then we are using the Outlook application. And this is the part where we are measuring the to CC BCC subject body. As you can see, we have attached one file, but we can attach multiple files as well, just by putting .attachments.add and the complete path of those files. The reason we have the skill here is because a copy of the file is being created to be able to attach it. And after we have sent that email, we are deleting the temporary file. And this is the message box at the end, which says the email has been sent successfully. Now you will notice that right now the default values are my email, the active workbook name, and hello, please find latest and updated file. Of course, you can modify it, and you can also pick these values directly from the sheet. If you're interested in learning more about Excel and Outlook automation, then you can look at Ron De Bruyn's website, and there are many different examples that have been given. Do keep in mind that some of it might be a little complex and the code might be quite long, but then if you're really looking at solutions available online, you can go to this website or just do a basic Google search and you will find there's a lot of content that people have already created around it. So there you go. We have seen how we can automate sending an email via Outlook from our current Excel file.